One more step in the wrong direction, and the crossbows will release their arrows. If you open the wrong door, you'll end up in a river of mercury. It's almost impossible to get out of this place, but it is even more difficult to get here. No, this is not a location from an adventure movie, but a treasure hunter. This is a real giant tomb filled with traps and streams of toxic mercury. And it's not somewhere deep in the Amazon jungle or an unknown island. This tomb is located in central China, near the city of Xi'an. And you know what the coolest thing is? This tomb was built more than 2,000 years ago. And even now, in the 21st century, we still don't know how to get there. But let's start from the beginning. Many of you have probably heard of terracotta statues. Thousands of clay sculptures of people. Those statues were first found in 1974, when a group of peasants were digging decks near Xi'an. They found a detailed human-sized figure, and that was 1 out of 1,000. Each figure was made as realistic as possible. Each of them was unique and had its distinctive details. More than 50 years have passed, and scientists are still digging up these sculptures. The number has already exceeded 8,000. But what are they doing there? What is their purpose? Terracotta sculptures are kinda guarding the tomb of Emperor Qin Shi Huang. He was such an influential man in China that he wasn't just buried in a tomb. His servants created a giant coffin complex the size of a small town. So, if thousands of clay guards symbolically protect this place, it's difficult to imagine what's in the center of this ancient, gigantic tomb. But first, let's find out who Qin Shi Huang was, and then move on to the dangerous traps. He was the first son of the ruler of the kingdom of Qin. It was one of the 6 kingdoms that existed on the territory of modern China. In 2059 BCE, when Qin Shi Huang was born, those 6 kingdoms were independent and separated from one another. Moreover, there was a strong conflict between them that lasted for more than 200 years. But Qin Shi Huang turned out to be the man who managed to conquer and unite all these kingdoms. He became more than just a king. He became the first emperor of China. But how did he complete a seemingly impossible task? Natural disasters, clever strategy, tactics, and skills helped him to conquer the 6 kingdoms. Scientists are still arguing about some of the details of how this happened. All that can be said is that Qin Shi Huang was a very wise and intelligent emperor. So it's not surprising that his burial turned out to be so huge. He was buried in the largest and most luxurious funeral complex in the history of China. The area the size of a small city contains many underground caves filled with things an emperor could need in the afterlife. In ancient China, as well as in ancient Egypt, people believed that when an emperor went to the other world, he could take with him those things that were buried with him. Unfortunately, sometimes it could be people, but Qin Shi Huang acted wisely and correctly. He decided to bury clay statues. But the coolest thing is that the architects and builders of this complex made it impregnable. The whole area holds many secrets, historical artifacts, and priceless objects. There's a beautiful place with the emperor's body in the center of this tomb. Imagine how many treasures you can find there, and all of them were meant to remain untouched and unseen by other people. And we probably won't be able to get to them, at least in the near future. Ancient Chinese historian Sima Qian wrote something about the tomb about 100 years after the emperor's burial. He said that this place had dangerous traps inside the tomb that would destroy anyone who dared to enter the tomb. The engineers installed crossbows with loaded arrows and also poured a huge amount of mercury, simulating the movement of rivers. Of course, that was 2,000 years ago, and crossbows probably don't work anymore. But what about mercury? This toxic metal has no expiration date. It's shiny and moves quickly in liquid form. It looks beautiful, but don't touch it. Even a small drop of mercury can cause damage to your body. Inhalation of its vapors or ingestion causes damage to nerves, the liver, kidneys, and many other symptoms. And that's just one drop. Imagine how dangerous rivers of this substance can be. Who knows how much mercury was loaded there by the tomb builders? But even if you dodge all the traps and don't end up in the poisonous river, mercury would still be able to harm you. Its vapors can pass through the cracks in the walls. This means that the entire tomb is probably soaked in this substance. And by the way, this is not just a guess. Scientists have measured the mercury level at the excavation site and found that it's much higher than normal. But why mercury? In ancient China, mercury was considered the elixir of youth, the source of immortality. According to the records, Qin Shi Huang often took pills with this element. Perhaps this was the reason that his life ended at the age of 49. In any case, people can damage ancient structures and artifacts during excavations. For example, archaeologists caused great damage to Tutankhamun's tomb during its exploration. You dig around, but then suddenly the entrance collapses and you destroy vases, scrolls, interior decorations, and other stuff. But even if you do everything carefully, the writing and drawings on the walls can be destroyed by sunlight or oxygen. Places where there has been no fresh air and ultraviolet radiation for thousands of years have their own chemical composition that can be damaged by contact with the outside world. In the 1970s, when archaeologists were excavating terracotta sculptures, the paint pigment fell off the statues because of contact with the sun and air. Fortunately, the archaeologists quickly adapted and created a technology that allowed them to get the statues out without damaging the paint. It was a long and careful process, but it was worth it, and here's why. According to ancient writings, the emperor created an underground kingdom with a beautiful palace in the center. He decorated the ceiling of this palace with expensive pearls. You know why? To simulate the stars in the night sky. And that's just the ceiling. It's difficult to imagine how the walls, floor, and tomb of the emperor are decorated. Besides, scientists expect to find many other statues that copy the emperor's servants. So, in simple terms, the tomb of Qin Shi Huang is a paradise for archaeologists and historians. But of course, it will take more than one generation before they extract all the treasures. Some experts predict that the excavation of the entire tomb could take centuries. But of course, new archaeological technologies can change everything. For example, non-invasive research methods mean you don't have to enter the tomb. You can see it through a special device. Another idea is the use of muons. Those are subatomic products that appear as a result of the collision of cosmic rays and atoms in the Earth's atmosphere. The point is that these muons can penetrate through solid objects, just like X-rays. Or how about nanotechnologies? Imagine millions of tiny digger robots climbing into a tomb and starting to scan the area. They transmit the data to a computer, and then scientists create a holographic model. It all sounds cool, but to be honest, the charm of archaeology is lost here. It's one thing when you carefully dig up some ancient artifact with your hands, see it with your own eyes, and scrupulously clean it from the ground. And it's completely different when you watch it on a computer screen. But in any case, technologies using muons or some kind of robots ensure people's safety. It's better if a computer falls into a trap than if it happens to an archaeologist.
Around 150,000 years ago, the dragon men, with huge skulls, square eye sockets, and enormous teeth, used to roam the frosty forests of northern China. They didn't get their name after fire-breathing monsters, though, but after a river where construction workers accidentally found the first skull in 1933. The skull that came from the river mud was large and nearly complete, with an elongated cranium and a heavy brow bone. It must have looked so crazy that the worker who found it decided to hide it for years in an abandoned well. Before passing away in 2018, he told his grandchildren about his secret find, and they rushed to the well. Scientists got their hands on the skull only in 2021. They noticed an odd mishmash of features: a squat and wide skull, like in ancient hominins, a tooth with 3 roots that you'd rarely see today, and at the same time, delicate cheekbones, which are common now. To identify the find, A team of scientists studied 95 old skulls, jawbones, and teeth from different ancient human groups. They carefully examined over 600 details on these fossils to understand how these ancient humans were related. Then, they used a super powerful computer to create billions of family trees showing how these groups evolved over time. The goal was to find the simplest path of evolution, which most scientists think is the most likely way things happened. After all the calculations, the tree showed that the Dragon Man skull belonged to a new branch of ancient humans, and it turned out to be very closely related to modern human mammals. Researchers found out that the skull belonged to a man who lived at least 146,000 years ago in East Asia. Back then, modern humans, or Homo sapiens, lived alongside other human-like relatives, like the Neanderthals and Denisovans. The discovery of the Dragon Man, or Homo longi, as they also call him, could rewrite the story of human evolution. It might be closer to modern humans than even the Neanderthals. We just had no idea what his face looked like until now. A scientist from Brazil created a 3D digital model of Dragon Man's face based on his skull. Since some parts of the skull were missing, he used a complete skull from another ancient human, Homo erectus, to fill in the gaps. He then used special scans from modern humans and chimpanzees to figure out how the skin and muscles would fit on the skull. To make the model look more realistic and lifelike, the scientist also added hair and colors to bring Dragon Man to life. The final model showed that Dragon Man had the biggest head of any ancient human ever found, nearly 26 inches around. That means his skull was as big as a gorilla's, or even a lion's. Scientists believe that his generous size may have helped him survive the freezing cold winters of Harbin, where they found the skull, and where temperatures still drop to only 3 degrees today. Now, not all scientists agree that Dragon Man is a completely new species or where it belongs in the human family tree. Some experts think the skull's unique features might just be because of its size, rather than proof that it's a distinct species. People from the same species can look different based on their age, gender, where they lived, and how old the fossil is. Some scientists compare it to another skull found in China, which is considered part of another already well-studied species. Then there's the mystery of the Denisovans, an ancient human group that lived in Asia for thousands of years but left very few fossils behind. The closest match to Dragon Man might be a broken jawbone found in Tibet in 2019. Some scientists believe that means Dragon Man could be a Denisovan, but others aren't so sure because the Harbin skull has no jaw to compare it to. Scientists first discovered Denisovans in 2008 when they found a small piece of a finger bone in Denisova cave in the Altai Mountains. They learned that the bone had belonged to a little girl who was between 5 and 7 years old when she passed away around 40,000 years ago. The freezing weather in the cave had kept the bone in excellent condition. A couple of years later, another team of scientists managed to extract DNA from the find. They compared it to the DNA of modern humans and another ancient human species, Neanderthals. Her DNA was similar to both, but it was also different enough to show that she was part of an entirely new species of humans. No one had known about this group before. The scientists decided to name it Denisovans, after the cave where they found her tiny finger bone. Later, they discovered 3 more Denisovan fossils, including some teeth also inside the same cave. Researchers still aren't sure where the Denisovans came from, but one idea is that they were related to Homo erectus. These were the earliest humans who looked a lot like us, with long legs and shorter arms, making them great walkers. About 700,000 years ago, some of them left Africa and traveled all the way to Eurasia. They became the great-great-great-grandparents of both Denisovans and Neanderthals. Around 370,000 years ago, these two groups split up. Neanderthals went west to Europe and Western Asia, while Denisovans went east to East Asia and Southeast Asia. Some Denisovans even made it to the Philippines, Papua New Guinea, and beyond, crossing the Wallace Line, which separates Asia from Australia. More recently, Scientists studied the DNA of many people from Southeast Asia and found that Denisovans might not have been just one group of ancient humans, but three distinct kinds. One of these groups was as different from other Denisovans as Neanderthals were. Some Denisovans may have lived longer than the Neanderthals, who disappeared around 40,000 years ago. A study suggests that one group of Denisovans lived alongside modern humans in New Guinea until at least 30,000 years ago, and maybe even as recently as 15,000 years ago. If that's true, they were the last humans on Earth besides us. This surprising discovery is part of a growing number of finds showing that ancient Asia was full of various versions of humans, including the newly discovered kind in the Philippines. Scientists now realize that the islands of Southeast Asia were a hotspot for early humans. They believe learning more about early humans could help them better understand the genetic properties of people in Indonesia and neighboring regions, and even improve healthcare in the region. Researchers found special clues in their DNA that show ancient human groups split apart an exceptionally long time ago. When Homo sapiens traveled from Africa, they formed families with other early humans and passed small pieces of those ancient relatives' DNA down through the generations. Scientists still don't know for sure why Denisovans and Neanderthals disappeared while Homo sapiens survived. One plausible reason is that Neanderthals and Denisovans lived in small, close-knit groups, which may have caused health problems over time. Our ancient ancestors lived in big groups with more genetic variety, which helped them stay healthier and adapt to changes. Another big advantage was that Homo sapiens had strong social networks. They shared innovative ideas, tools, and survival skills. In the end, Denisovans couldn't handle the tremendous changes happening on Earth and slowly disappeared. There are many myths around arguably the greatest structure ever built by humans, the Great Wall of China. Some say it's so grand that it's visible from space. Others claim that you can see it from as far as the moon. Other theories suggest that the builders of the wall were left inside. Well, sorry to disappoint you, but all these impressive stories are just myths. But even with those stories busted, the Great Wall of China is an impressive and truly breathtaking structure. So let me tell you its true story. Today, China is one of the most populated countries in the world, counting as many as 1.4 billion residents. It's also one of the oldest nations in the world. It has 3,500 years of continuous written history, but the civilization existed long before that. There is a theory that while the European continent, for example, was most likely reached by humans from Africa, China wasn't populated by settlers that came from somewhere else. Some people believe that the Chinese civilization got formed from local Stone Age people who lived on the territory since the Prehistoric period. So now, the Great Wall of China. It's truly big even by today's standard, stretching for over 13,000 miles. To imagine it better, it's almost 5 times the distance between New York and Los Angeles. Or even a bit greater than the distance between the North and South Poles. Even in modern times, people have never built anything close to this big. Of course, it didn't take a day to build the Great Wall of China. 2? Keep going. In fact, the wall was being built for centuries. Maybe you know that ancient cities had walls around them to protect themselves from invaders. Yes, Chinese cities had them too. The first Chinese emperor united the country in 220 BCE and got a brilliant but very ambitious idea to turn all city walls into one big wall that would defend the country's border against attacks from the north. A trusted general directed the construction, enrolling a big group of workers, soldiers, commoners, and convicts. Back then, the wall was built of rammed earth and wood. In some places that were strategically important, the sections of the wall overlapped to provide maximum security. The walls were around 26 feet high on average. But the Great Wall didn't yet look like the construction we know today. Every next emperor would pick up the big wall project, strengthening and extending it, repairing, but also modernizing construction techniques. Some used bricks to build it, others moved on to granite and marble blocks. Watchtowers and platforms weren't there from the beginning as well. They were added by Ming emperors. The watchtowers made it possible to communicate with other parts of the wall through smoke and fire messages. So, the wall is quite inconsistent in terms of material, but it only adds more charm to the construction and shows how much effort and time it took. The reasons why some parts of the wall have been standing for centuries and are still in good condition is glutinous rice flour. Turns out, this sticky rice mortar is almost like cement. It's very strong and waterproof, sealing the bricks so tightly together that even sneaky weeds can't grow between them. You may also notice that some bricks have writings carved on them. They were left by the workers who were building the wall. The purpose of those writings is quality assurance. They contain such information as location, quantity, and responsible officials. So, in the case of some problems with the quality of materials or constructions, it would be known who should be held accountable for it. Recently, a research group has looked through official historical documents of the Ming Dynasty that ruled China from the 14th to the 17th centuries. They came across records of secret doors in the Great Wall, so they decided to find them. They used a flying robot to capture continuous centimeter resolution photos of the wall. They photographed 90% of the wall that was built during the Ming Dynasty and discovered the remains of over 220 secret doors along the wall. Some of them have a specific width and height that allows only one person to go through. Others are large enough to allow 2 horses to pass at the same time. Why are the doors there? Well, the Great Wall's main goal was to protect the country from the enemy. Building doors that could let the enemy in would undermine the whole point of having a wall. So, of course, the doors were secret passages. They perfectly matched the surroundings topographically, and the exit on the outside was camouflaged with bricks so that it was almost completely indistinguishable from the brick wall. The wall was never just a defensive wall, and it was never completely closed. It could be opened on demand. It was also a structure used for trade and commerce, communication between inside and outside the wall, and of course, for defense and spying. Some doors were used for trade with the other side. Through smaller doors, a person would sneak out to spy on the enemy that lived on the other side. The hidden gates were also useful for a sudden attack. As you remember, some gates were camouflaged with brick on the outside. The exit was so indistinguishable that the enemy had no idea exactly where it was located. The inside entrance for Chinese soldiers was hollow, so they could walk through the wall and break the camouflaged exit gate from the inside, starting their surprise attack. Now, even though the main point was to prevent outsiders from getting into the city, the wall wasn't too effective on that matter. It could still be climbed over or marched around. So the wall was being watched at all times, and the guards gave signals to the troops if they saw the enemy approach. Also, the wall provided more time to mobilize and bulk up the country's forces or lure the enemy troops into a difficult strategic position. The construction stopped at the end of the 19th century. The wall lost its strategic and military importance due to technological advances. Over the centuries to today, only 8% of the Great Wall is in good condition, and the rest is damaged. Also, around 1/3 of the wall has disappeared without a trace, due to both natural erosion and human damage. I guess you could say it's now just a pretty good wall. As you remember, the first parts of the wall were built out of rammed earth and wood. These are not the most unfailing materials if we're talking about thousands of years. Also, destructive farming methods have turned large areas into a desert and contributed to erosion. Also, many bricks were taken away from the wall in the last century to be used in building farms and houses. The wall is being deconstructed stone by stone even today, but this time by tourists. Quite a few of them take a stone as a souvenir. That's a total of a lot of stones, considering that over 10 million tourists visit the Great Wall every year. Since 1987, the wall has been a UNESCO World Heritage Site, highlighting that it has an outstanding importance to humanity. The wall is one of China's 56 World Heritage Sites, second place among countries with landmarks protected by UNESCO. Who's first, you ask? Well, the top spot, with 58 World Heritage Sites, belongs to Italy. And do you know that the wall isn't only a famous tourist attraction, but also the location of the Great Wall Marathon? It's a marathon that was established in 1999 and is one of the most challenging ones in the world. You guessed right, people run along the wall, including all the steps. There are 3 distances, so that participants can run a full marathon that is 26 miles, a half marathon that's 13 miles, or just have a fun run of 5 miles.
Whoa, there could have been more human species throughout history than we used to think. In one place in East China, Hualongdong, scientists found the remains of a human who lived around 300,000 years ago. They found a jawbone and parts of the skull. They carefully studied these bones to compare them with the bones of other ancient and modern humans. The remains themselves weren't that unusual. We know our human family is really diverse and has been around for millions of years. You know our ancient relative called Australopithecus, right? These fellas lived in different parts of Africa, and they were known for walking on 2 legs, just like modern humans. But their brains and some other parts of their bodies made them more similar to apes. Their teeth are a good example of how they were like a mix of apes and modern humans. Their canine teeth were smaller than those of apes, but their back teeth were still larger than ours. There were different types of them. You can recognize some Paranthropus because of their big jaws and teeth. One of the most famous fossils of Australopithecus is Lucy, a lady that's about 3.2 million years old. She was found in Ethiopia. So, we know that our family got pretty big from that point, or probably even before it. But it's always great to welcome some new members, which seemed to be the case with this new discovery. Some parts of these bones look similar to the bones of ancient humans, while other parts look more like the bones modern humans have. For example, the person whose bones they found didn't have a real chin. That means we can't put it in any of the groups we know of, like Neanderthals, or maybe even Homo sapiens. So, might we be missing a branch from the human family tree, or an important step in our evolution? What we're looking at here could be some mix between the creatures that became modern humans like us, and the ones that turned into what we today know as Denisovans. It takes time to figure it all out, though. We hadn't known much about Denisovans either, until we found some of their bones in a cave in the mountains. These bones are really rare, and we only had a few pieces to analyze, but their genes told us a lot more about their past than their fossils. Different kinds of humans lived on this planet, but through time, they spread around. One group started living in Africa. Those are our kind, Homo sapiens. Another group went to Europe. That's how we got Neanderthals. But some of these ancient human groups moved all the way to Asia. That's where we can trace a new interesting kind, Denisovans. It seems they're cousins to both modern humans and Neanderthals. The 3 species actually shared a common ancestor about 765,000 years ago. It's still not clear why Neanderthals and Denisovans took different paths, but one theory says that it was mostly because the Arctic ice sheet expanded southward all the way to the Black Sea, cutting off Europe from Asia. Life, or better yet, the planet, kept them separated for a very long time. Plus, they kept changing places where they lived all the time, always looking for something better, like every other human species before and after them. But this didn't last forever. Scientists found genes from 2 groups of Denisovans, one in mainland Asia and the other in a place called Melanesia. So not only did they have different groups within their populations, but it also seems that after thousands and thousands of years of developing independently, the members of these 3 populations, Neanderthal, Denisovans, and modern humans, somehow met again and spread all across the land. 5% of the Denisovan genome lives on, not in the area where scientists found their bones, but in people that live thousands of miles away in Southeast Asia, for instance, in Papua New Guinea. But scientists believed that the cave where they found the remains of Denisovans might be as far north as they had lived. It would have been way too cold for them to survive if they had gone further north. From there, they traveled as far south as Indonesia. This was possible because, during their time, sea levels were lower than today, so Indonesia was connected to mainland Asia. But they probably didn't make it to Australia since it was still separated by water. These three groups mixed together too. Scientists have found a bone of a girl who had a Neanderthal mom and a Denisovan dad. It's the only first-generation hybrid human we've discovered. She even got a cool nickname, Denny. One of the mysteries about Denisovans is how they disappeared. Maybe they mixed so much with other humans that they just blended in. Or it's possible that modern humans' ancestors were stronger, had better tools, or even brought some diseases that didn't affect them, but affect Denisovans. Climate and where they lived might have also played a role. Denisovans lived in a wide range of environments, from cold parts of Asia to tropical Indonesia. Climate changes and the challenges of different habitats might have been really difficult to survive. But it's hard to draw strict lines in our family tree. We're still relatively new at learning about it anyway. Who knows how many new members we are about to discover? Half a century ago, a team of scientists had an idea that a collection of fossils they found at the Great Rift Valley in Tanzania were actually the remains of some new human species. Yup, that was the time when we welcomed Homo habilis into the family. It was a big discovery at that time since people mostly believed that the story of our evolution had been really simple. First, there were australopiths that looked like apes. After them, there was Homo erectus, the upright man. They most likely lived in Africa around 2 million years ago, but also expanded really quickly across Eurasia. It was the first human species that we know about to have traveled such long distances to find a better place for life. They looked and behaved like humans. Plus, they were probably the first of our ancient ancestors who learned how to deal with fire. Maybe they were the first to cook food as well, and that's what we're definitely thankful for. Cooking food was an innovation that made the human diet more nutritive, and we could grow bigger and smarter brains. So, yeah, Homo habilis made things more complicated. They could walk on 2 legs, but they could also be better at climbing trees than walking on the ground like us. Plus, their brains were smaller than what a human should probably have. At first, it seemed these fossils could be from a completely different side of the family, related to other creatures, Australopithecus africanus, that looked like apes. But more and more digging showed that even though its jaws and teeth were similar, Homo habilis was still bigger and a bit different. The name means handy man, because they were probably able to make and use simple tools. Searching for more fossils in Africa wasn't easy because a team of researchers had to deal with wild animals and tough conditions all the time. But eventually, they managed to find some teeth and a strange skull that was, again, something different from the ancestors we knew about. The teeth were really big, so this new fella got the nickname of Nutcracker Man. For a long time, everyone believed this kind had evolved to eat hard foods. But the fossil teeth didn't show much damage, so they might have been eating food that was softer than we thought. This finding might help us understand how our teeth have been evolving through time, too. And right there, in the same layers of soil where Nutcracker Man was lying, they found ancient stone tools. At first they thought those had belonged to Nutcracker, but as they kept digging, they found more fossils that didn't match Nutcracker Man. It means that someone else must be the real tool maker. But that's another story for another time.
Ooh, so check this out. Researchers just found some super old footprints from a family of extinct humans, like we're talking 300,000 years ago. The prints belong to a group of Homo heidelbergensis. Ooh, that's a tough one, but I nailed it. So those dudes were pretty advanced for their time. They were building homes and hunting big animals. But unfortunately, they couldn't handle climate change and disappeared about 28,000 years ago. No, they weren't sissies, trust me. The weather was really tough back then, and they couldn't just go grab a down jacket like you do. So, the University of Tübingen crew made the discovery in Germany, where they found the perfectly preserved prints in a forest by a lake. Apparently, elephants, rhinos, and other critters used to come relax by the lake, and so did this Heidelberg family. The scientists believe they were probably just a family outing rather than a group of adult hunters, since there were little kid footprints too. And depending on the season, they could munch on plants, fruits, leaves, shoots, and mushrooms around the lake. Experts even found tracks from an extinct elephant species that used to weigh up to 13 tons. Now, can you imagine seeing one of those in person? Just so you know, 13 tons is about 45 times as heavy as a pig. Oink. They were digging around in Schöningen when they stumbled upon some elephant tracks that were 21 inches long. That's like the length of a really big ruler. They even found wood fragments in the ruts that the elephants had left behind. But wait, there's more. They also found a rhino print from the Pleistocene era, which is pretty wild. It's the first time they found a footprint from this particular species in Europe. Who knew rhinos had such big feet? Except those whom the rhino stepped on. Meanwhile, over in New Mexico, some British and American archaeologists found some ancient human footprints that date back 23,000 years. They used radiocarbon dating to figure out when these footprints were made, and it turns out they were stomped into the mud during the last glacial maximum. That's when ice sheets covered much of North America and sea levels were lower than they are now. Now, we've always thought that humans first made their way to North America between 13,000 and 16,000 years ago. But these footprints suggest that our ancestors were wandering around way earlier than that. Some people even think that humans might have been hanging out in North America as far back as 33,000 years ago, although not everyone is convinced. Alrighty, if there were footprints, there must have also been some shoes too, am I right? Well, researchers may not have found signature Gucci loafers, even though they've been around since 1953, but they did find a cave in Armenia full of ancient artifacts from the Copper Age. And guess what? Those artifacts included a seriously well-preserved shoe that's now the oldest footwear ever found. That footwear was made from a single piece of cowhide leather, which is pretty rare today, despite all the fancy schmancy technological upgrades we've got today. Talk about premium quality. Currently, the coolest modern-day designer shoes are trying to copy this hole-cut technique. The shoe was also rubbed with some kind of plant or vegetable oil for extra durability, and it even had shoelaces that crisscrossed through a series of holes, just like our beloved sneakers today. The shoe was about the size of a woman's US 7, so we're guessing it was tailor-made for some fancy-pants wealthy person. Can you imagine rocking these feet whips back in the day? They were possibly the talk of the town. Now, since we're talking about shoes, have you ever had that gross feeling when you step in something sticky? Especially if you're wearing a brand new pair of white sneakers? No, not what you're thinking. I'm talking about chewing gum. It's a total buzzkill to have it stuck to your shoe. A super cool British archaeology student named Sarah Pickett found a 5,000-year-old piece of Neolithic chewing gum made from birch bark tar while on a dig in Finland. It even had tooth marks in it. Who knew our ancestors were into chewing gum too? Apparently, birch bark tar has antiseptic properties, so it's believed that Neolithic peeps chewed it to help treat mouth and gum infections. So it looks like people have been spitting out gum since the beginning of time. Ah, what a tradition. Prehistoric designers had way more than just shoes to offer to prehistoric fashionistas. You're not going to find such a statement piece in the mass market, and I'm not sure about high-end boutiques either. Yep, it's supposedly the oldest purse ever found, and yep, those are dog teeth used as decorations for a handbag. According to one of the archaeologists, these teeth were all the rage back in 2500 BCE. People were putting them on everything, from clothes to jewelry. But this particular handbag was something special. It had over a dozen sets of teeth and was super fancy, which means whoever owned it was perhaps a VIP. Unfortunately, the purse itself didn't survive the test of time. All that's left are these teeth, pointing in the same direction and looking like a modern-day handbag flap. It must have been truly chic back in the day, but it's a good thing we've moved on to more humane materials for our accessories. Did you hear about the dino-sized discovery on Yorkshire's coast? Yep, sometimes scientists discover not human footprints, but dino footprints. This time, they found a record-breaking dinosaur print that could have been left by a predator taking a break 166 million years ago. Can you imagine a T-Rex lounging on the beach with a smoothie in hand? This 3-foot-long fossil, spotted in Burniston Bay near Scarborough, is the largest ever discovered in the region. The team of researchers who studied the track concluded that it was made by a giant carnivore like a megalosaurus. That's one big and hungry dino. The footprint is the largest made by a theropod, which is a group of bipedal dinosaurs that includes the infamous Tyrannosaurus rex. So, we're talking about some seriously big and scary creatures here. A paleontologist from the University of Manchester said the discovery had shed new light on the behavior of these carnivorous giants. Apparently, features of the footprint suggest that this large predator was squatting down before standing up. Maybe it was doing some yoga or taking a bathroom break. Who knows? Another archaeologist, Marie Woods, stumbled across the print while collecting shellfish on the shore. She said she couldn't believe what she was looking at. I mean, who would expect to find a giant dinosaur print while picking up some clams? It's lucky that Ms. Woods and Rob Taylor, a local fossil collector, rescued the fragile print from the shoreline. Experts warned that it was at risk of being lost to erosion or landslides. Now, plans are in motion for the footprint to go on public display at the Rotunda Museum in Scarborough. But there's some more dino-mite news. Several drought conditions in Texas have revealed ancient dinosaur footprints that are over 100 million years old. Multiple dinosaur tracks belong to the dinos were recently discovered at Dinosaur Valley State Park in northwest Texas. The droughts have caused a river running through central Texas to dry up almost entirely, which is how these prehistoric prints were finally uncovered. This guy was a real beast, measuring 15 feet and weighing in at 7 tons. It used to roam the area over 113 million years ago, according to the state park. About 60 prints from this dino have been revealed due to the drought, with an estimated 140 tracks from the dinosaur in total. But that's not all. Prints from Sauroposeidon were also discovered. This creature was a massive 66 feet long and weighed about 48 tons when fully matured. Experts believe that the Acrocanthosaurus preyed on Sauroposeidon, which explains why their prints were found together. There's a weird thing though. Sauroposeidon was bigger than Acrocanthosaurus. Can any professors please explain to me why the smaller dude would munch on the bigger one?
Let's embark on a wild thought experiment. What if we could magically travel to all our ancestors in chronological order? Could we talk to them and actually form some connection? And just how far back can we go while still connecting with them? Well, let's see. Primates were the funky cousins of other mammals. Around 85 million years ago, during the late Cretaceous period, they went their own way and became the first of their kind. Human evolution is very complicated, and we can't draw a distinctive line on where it started. But we're going to start with hominins. Hominins are a group of primates that include all the species leading up to Homo sapiens. So, imagine you hopped in your super cool time machine and landed in the past, way back when hominins were chilling around. What would happen? First off, you'd spot these quirky creatures roaming around with their short, hairy bodies, curious faces, and big eyes. They might look a bit different from you, but that's part of the fun. They were excellent climbers and incredibly curious about the outer world. They munched on fruits, nuts, and whatever they found in nature. And yes, surprisingly, humans aren't meat eaters by nature. Originally, we all were vegans. Of course, with them, you can forget about proper communication. But still, primates are incredibly smart. So, a good old game of charades could do the trick. Mime your way into their hearts with friendly gestures, and they'll be thrilled to see a futuristic traveler like you. These hominins were curious beings, so they'd probably be very interested in you if you were friendly with them and gave them some food. Next, let's move on to Homo habilis and Homo erectus. Their period, the Stone Age, started about 2.6 million years ago. As you can guess, it was the time when we started using stone tools. The Stone Age lasted for roughly 3.4 million years and ended between 4000 BCE and 2000 BCE. It ended with the beginning of metalworking. Homo habilis, or handyman, was like the MacGyvers of the Stone Age. These crafty creatures were the first to use stone tools. And Homo erectus was the upright man. They were a bit more recent. As their name suggests, they were the first to walk on two legs like us. They might have looked a bit different from modern humans, but still. So what were their lives like? Well, they still were true survivors. Homo erectus loved to explore and tinker with things. They made simple stone tools, like sharp rocks for cutting and scraping. They were basically the early inventors. Homo erectus was quite adventurous. They left Africa and traveled to far-off lands, exploring new territories. They were the first ones to set foot in places like Asia and Europe. They lived in caves or simple shelters made of sticks and animal hides. And let's not forget their wild fashion sense. Animal skins and leaves were their trendy outfits. But don't think they just sat around all day. They were hunters and gatherers, seeking out delicious fruits, nuts, and even hunting animals. How would you communicate with them? Well, they used simple grunts, gestures, and body language to understand each other. So, if you met Homo habilis and Homo erectus, you'd be in for a wild ride. You could show them some advanced technology to impress them and teach them some new cool tricks. Next on our list are Homo heidelbergensis and Neanderthals. Homo heidelbergensis was like the cool older cousin of Neanderthals and us. They lived around 800,000 to 200,000 years ago. Picture them as sturdy and strong, with big brains compared to their earlier relatives. They were expert tool makers and loved exploring new places. The Neanderthals lived in Europe and Asia from 400,000 to 40,000 years ago. Neanderthals were super smart, and they had awesome adaptations to cold weather. With their thick, strong bodies and big noses, they could handle chilly winters like champs. Both Homo heidelbergensis and Neanderthals were skilled hunters and gatherers. They'd chase after mammoths and other big game with sharp spears they crafted themselves. But it wasn't all rough and tough. They knew how to have fun too. Neanderthals made art and showed their emotions and connections with each other. With these folks, you could draw pictures in the dirt, dance around, and make gestures. They'd get the idea. And finally, we meet Homo sapiens. Picture this. You're waking up in a cave with your family, trying to keep warm by a flickering fire. The cave is pretty cozy, isn't it? But nope, no permanent homes here. You're part of a nomadic tribe, moving wherever the food is best. Hey, but at least you've got some nifty tools to survive. Grab your awesome handmade spear, crafted by watching others or maybe invented by your genius self. Time to go hunting mammoths. And if mammoths aren't cooperating, just gather nuts, berries, and bird eggs. Stone Age humans were real foodies. They made flour from oats and spiced things up with wild onions and mustard seeds. There were artists too. Using minerals and bones, they created stunning images and even flutes for some musical entertainment around the campfire. You still can only talk in body language and facial expressions. but Homo sapiens were smarter than their ancestors. So you could even teach them basic gestures and their meaning, like hands up for mammoth and stuff. Maybe try doing a funky dance or a happy jig. That would get their attention for sure. But this wouldn't be the only way to communicate. Stone Age peeps loved drawing and making flutes, so you could totally join in on the creative fun. Show off your artistic skills with a drawing or two, or maybe even play some tunes. Don't worry, they would be impressed by your skills, even if you aren't that far away from them. But tools are definitely the way to their hearts. If you brought some handy gadgets or cool inventions from our time, they'd be super impressed. Just create some simple tool from the future that can make their lives easier, and they'll love you instantly. So, while you might not be having deep philosophical debates with the Stone Age crew, you can still share some good times. Learning is the way to go. Besides, even though life was shorter back then, averaging around 30 years, it's still enough time to find a partner and have kids. Though, the dating pool might be a bit limited. So let's leave that topic for another time. Just hold on to that axe at night because, well, sometimes our ancestors would eat each other and like to do some head-dumping battles. Yikes. Let's finish our journey with the Bronze Age, just for fun. This cool era lasted from around 3300 to around 1200 BCE, and guess what? They were all about that strong metal called bronze. It's the time when people got creative and started using bronze to make all sorts of cool things. Bronze is a combo of copper and tin, making it harder and more durable than anything else at the time. Awesome civilizations started popping up all over the place. They either made their own bronze by smelting copper and mixing it with tin, or traded for it with other places. So, as you step into this ancient era, you'll be amazed by the sight of bustling Bronze Age cities with majestic bronze gates, amazing markets, and grand temples dedicated to powerful gods. During the Bronze Age, we finally developed languages and writing. Mesopotamia and Egypt were leading the way with their fancy cuneiform and hieroglyphs, the earliest writing systems ever. They were basically the kings of calligraphy. Remember, the language might be a bit different. You'd be hearing unfamiliar words. But with these humans, you can at least use drawings, art, and many other things to communicate. Anyway, this is what meeting our ancestors would be like. What a wild journey through time. So, remember to cherish our past and appreciate the wonders of our modern world. Stay tuned.
Hey there, curious history buffs. Have you heard the legend of the ancient race of giants of Nevada? Yes, I'm talking about actual giants that allegedly lived thousands of years ago. Now I know what you're thinking. Giants, really? Well, archaeological finds add fuel to this debate too. And here's where it gets interesting. Lovelock Cave was indeed used as a burial site, and some of the remains found there are much larger than average human bones. The cave is by the Humboldt Sink in western Nevada. It was once part of an enormous lake, which eventually dried up, leaving a number of smaller ones, including the Humboldt Sink. The cave became the home of the Ka tribe. According to the legend, these red-haired giants were so big that they had to be buried in the cave itself. Indeed, later on, archaeologists discovered 8 to 10 foot tall skeletons. This legend started to unfold when a mining engineer named John T. Reed talked to the locals in 1886. Once Reed saw the cave, he knew he was onto something. The news spread soon, but the cave was attracting another type of attention too. The deposits of a fertilizer known as guano were discovered inside the cave. So a mining company began excavating the precious resource in 1911 and soon shipped more than 250 tons of the fertilizer to San Francisco. Unfortunately, some of the human remains and artifacts were neglected and lost in the mining process. This led to an official excavation in 1912 and 1924. After the top layer of guano had been mined, strange objects started to surface. Around the area, the earliest evidence of human habitation dates back about 4,000 years. The Lovelock culture lasted for some 3,000 years, and they left us with 10,000 stunning artifacts. The pits in the cave were like a series of time capsules hidden at different depths. Archaeologists determined the age of each pit by its depth. It turns out that many different groups used the cave for storage over a really long time, and the things they stored there give us a really cool glimpse into their cultures. It's like a giant ancient storage unit full of hidden treasures. What have the researchers found besides the giant bones, you might ask? Some other bodies were mummified using a method similar to the one applied by ancient Egyptians. These remains also had something in common with the bodies discovered as far south as Lake Titicaca. Both mummies had some red hair. Yet, there are scientists who believe this reddish hue is the result of the interaction with the environment in which the bodies stayed. So, while the story of the red-haired giants may be a wild and intriguing tale, not everyone is convinced. Some experts believe that the bones found in Lovelock Cave are simply the remains of prehistoric animals, like mammoths or sloths. But others insist that there's something more to the story. Other relics, such as finely crafted baskets and exquisite duck decoys made from tule fibers, were also found there. In any case, this cave is worth the attention it gets. By the way, you can still visit this cave today and see the pits of different depths with your own eyes. But let me tell you one thing, it's in a hot, dry, and isolated place. Archaeologists have made another discovery that seems to be straight out of a legend. They think they found the palace of the one and only Odysseus, who was the legendary Greek king of Ithaca and the hero of Homer's epic poem. Move over, Indiana Jones. We've got some real-life adventure happening here from around 1300 BCE. Apparently, this is the only palace mentioned in Homer's epic poems that hasn't been found. The excavations have been made on the Ionian Islands, and the view from the ruins found on the island of Ithaca are exactly as described in the Odyssey, says the professor who led the excavation team. Known to the ancient Romans as Ulysses, the Greek hero took 10 years to return home to Ithaca after the fall of Troy. For many years, Homer's other epic, called the Iliad, which tells the story of the protracted siege of Troy by the Greeks, was regarded as a myth too. But then, in the 1870s, Troy was rediscovered in modern-day Turkey's Çanakkale city. So, if they found Troy, who's to say they couldn't find Odysseus's home? The researchers were following Homer's words as a roadmap. The excavation site has a building complex with 2 levels. It has important finds, such as storerooms and workshops, a complicated drainage system, and fragments of pottery. It also has a well from the 8th century BCE, which is around the time when Odysseus is believed to have been the king. Yet, not everyone is convinced that the team has actually discovered the home of Odysseus. A British researcher named Robert Biddlestone insists that Homer's description of ancient Ithaca isn't very similar to the island that now has its name, and that Odysseus's kingdom was actually on the Isle of Cephalonia. However, Italian archaeologist Adriano La Regina might have a more realistic approach to this debate. He says that whether this find has a connection to Ulysses or not, what's more important is the discovery of this royal palace. Once upon a time, in a land far away, the Klamath Indians spread a legend about the creation of Crater Lake. Okay, maybe this land is not that far away, and it still exists. You can find it in south-central Oregon, in the western United States. Anyway, the legend has it that this lake was formed in a vicious battle between 2 volcanoes, Mount Mazama and Mount Shasta. Then the spirits of Earth and the Sky, which are Lao, who ruled the below world, and Skell, the chief of the above world, joined the fight. It turned into a geological drama. During the battle, darkness veiled the land. The fight was over when Mount Mazama collapsed and sent Lao back into the underworld. Then the rain filled the pit and created a lake in the place where the mountain had once stood. Flash forward to our time. Scientists have discovered that Mount Mazama did erupt 7,700 years ago. Artifacts found in the area prove that the legend indeed contains some details about the explosion. The tale says that red-hot rocks were flying through the sky. This happened during the volcanic eruption that caused the mountain to collapse. This created the volcanic caldera, which later on got filled with water. What makes this legend came true story unusual is how long it has existed. According to researchers, these types of verbal stories lose their credibility within 600 to 700 years. That's why the legend about the creation of Crater Lake is so unique. So many generations, for hundreds of years, have been accurately passing down the information. This volcanic crater lake is now in a national park. It's famous for its deep blue color. The water in it is extremely clear. If you visit it today, the water you'll see won't be the same as for someone who will visit the place 250 years later. Because there are no rivers flowing into or out of the lake, the existing water evaporates and the lake gets filled again by rain and snowfall. Basically, every 250 years, the water is replaced. Plus, this lake is almost 2,000 feet deep, which makes it the deepest lake in the United States. Swimming is okay in the lake, but there's only one legal and safe trail to get to the shore. There are other activities, such as fishing and boat tours. Shared human experiences, such as birth, marriage, and aging, may explain why certain tales are shared globally. Similar struggles and obstacles faced by humans around the world generate similar themes in traditional stories about love, parenting, and mortality. So, do you have legends or tales you've heard of from your grandparents? Who knows? Maybe your ancestors too witnessed a cool historical event.
Throughout time, scientists have managed to uncover about 6,000 early human fossils, ranging from skulls to teeth. For some of these fossils, it was a breeze. Researchers could instantly identify them as belonging to, say, the Neanderthals. However, when it came to others, things got a bit trickier. Some fossils just didn't fit into any existing categories. So, what categories of prehistoric humans do we actually know about? Well, up until recently, we recognized 8 different species of early humans. One of these is Homo habilis, which means handyman. You'll recall that Homo is Latin for human. They resembled regular primates, but were pivotal in our evolution. They were the first to create stone tools, which significantly aided their daily activities, such as butchering. Next up, we have Homo rudolfensis. These guys were larger than Homo habilis and boasted bigger brains, but they were still quite distant from modern humans. For example, even though the neurological structure of their brains was becoming more complex, they were probably not capable of using any form of actual spoken language. Then came Homo erectus, the first to walk upright, followed by Homo antecessor, which is considered the last common ancestor of modern humans and Neanderthals, along with a host of other Homo species. Meanwhile, we're still piecing together the story of the enigmatic Denisovans. Our knowledge of Homo naledi is pretty limited too, since it was only discovered in 2013, and it is species number 8. Interestingly, Naledi means star in the Sotho language because they were found in a cave called Rising Star. Scientists were taken aback by them. Everything suggested they were around 2 million years old. But after closer examination and some tests, it turns out that the Naledi species is much younger, between 236 and 335,000 years old. Their hands were adapted to making tools, yet no tools have been found nearby. Long story short, they're a puzzling species, and there's still so much more to learn about them. So even though today we have only one human species on our planet, Homo sapiens, we continue to discover ancient species that are long gone. Now you might wonder why researchers study these extinct species. The truth is, they need this knowledge to piece together the intricate narrative of our prehistoric past. In 2024, a significant discovery emerged. the ninth human species, named Homo giluensis, which translates to large-headed. Researchers suggest that this species hunted wild horses, crafted stone tools, and processed animal hides to survive harsh winters. A researcher from the University of Hawaii noted that the discovery of this potential new species came about while his team was developing a novel method for classifying fossil evidence. Interestingly, one potential representative of Homo giluensis isn't entirely new to science. The Denisovans, first identified in 2010 through DNA analysis of a finger bone found in Siberia, have yet to be classified as a distinct species. Some scientists propose that they may actually belong to this newly identified group. These big-headed individuals could help shed light on the long-standing mysteries surrounding these hominin fossils, which have puzzled researchers due to their mixed characteristics of Homo erectus and Homo sapiens. You see, sometimes it's tough to call a spade when you don't even know what a spade looks like. You get the idea? Many unsolved mysteries linger, simply because scientists haven't had this crucial, big-headed piece of the puzzle. So theoretically, we modern humans could also be considered a bit of Homo giluensis. You don't believe me? Well, watch this. We need to consider two key facts for this equation. First, there are the Denisovans, a group we might refer to as Homo giluensis from a scientific perspective. Yeah, this is just a theory proposed by some researchers, but let's roll with it for now and pretend it's a fact. Second, it's important to know that the Denisovans interbred with the ancestors of modern-day Melanesians. These folks inhabit areas ranging from New Guinea to the Fiji Islands and carry between 4 and 6% Denisovan DNA. Now, you might not personally have those genes, unless you've been tested, of course, but the key takeaway here is that there are modern humans today who share genetic links with the Denisovans, or Homo giluensis, or big heads if you prefer. Now, that all sounds pretty plausible. Let's unpack step by step how it happened. Researchers have uncovered this type of ancient human, known as the Denisovans, based on skeletal remains found in Siberia. These ancient humans coexisted and interbred with modern humans, adding yet another layer to our understanding of human evolution. Named after the Siberian caves where their fossils were discovered, the Denisovans are believed to have roamed widely across Eurasia. Evidence indicates that the Denisovans lived alongside Neanderthals and interacted with early Homo sapiens, possibly around 50,000 years ago. A team of scientists successfully sequenced a complete genome from these ancient hominins using nuclear DNA extracted from a finger bone. This discovery reveals that at least 4 distinct human groups existed during the time when anatomically modern humans began migrating out of Africa. Alongside modern humans and Neanderthals, we now have to consider the Denisovans and another small human species from Indonesia, often referred to as the Hobbit, when discussing our evolutionary history. One intriguing question that arises is why Denisovan genes are predominantly found in modern Melanesians, yet absent from other Eurasian populations. Remember that 4 to 6%? One hypothesis suggests that interactions between the Denisovans and early modern humans were limited and brief, especially as humans migrated throughout Southeast Asia into Melanesia. Scientists speculate that only a small number of the Denisovans may have interbred with a larger group of modern humans. This could explain how the Denisovan genes made their way into the gene pool despite the likelihood of infrequent encounters. Anyway, the more scientists dig into our past, the more fascinating things they uncover about our ancestors. Take Neanderthals, for example. Did you know these guys were responsible for creating the very first piece of art ever? I had no idea. But a 2018 study of ancient cave art in Spain revealed what are now considered the oldest known artistic creations. We used to think Neanderthals lacked the cognitive skills needed for art, but it turns out they were actual art pioneers. Not only did they create art, but they also seem to have invented hashtags thousands of years before Chris Messina did it in 2007. Right, I'm kidding, but you'll soon get why I mention hashtags. The artworks found in several caves in Spain include simple hand stencils, a ladder-like drawing, and various other markings. Until recently, these prehistoric pieces were believed to have been made by early humans. But new testing methods suggest they're much older than we thought. Above all, the earliest recognized Neanderthal artwork, which looks like a hashtag, was discovered in Gibraltar back in 2014. To determine the age of these artworks, scientists employed advanced dating techniques using eHarmony and Match.com. Oops, wait a minute, wrong dating techniques. They actually used uranium and thorium radioisotopes instead of the traditional carbon dating. Once the necessary tests were completed, they confirmed the art was approximately 65,000 years old, 15,000 years older than the previously oldest known art from Indonesia. At that time, the only species around were Neanderthals, so it's safe to say they were behind these creations. Modern humans didn't arrive in Spain until about 20,000 years later. Hey, it was a long commute. That rules them out as the hashtag creators. The hand stencil was likely created intentionally, with the artist preparing the pigment and applying it over their hand. Plus, the caves also contain a collection of painted seashells that are an astonishing 115,000 years old. Some of these shells have been drilled, suggesting they might have been used as jewelry. Some specialists argue that the fact Neanderthals created art hints that they might have also had some form of spoken language. So maybe it's time we fully embrace Neanderthals as part of our lineage. They're humans too, just a different branch of our family tree. While these findings are intriguing, some experts remain skeptical about the new dating methods, claiming they're not entirely convinced. Hey, what do you think? Share your thoughts in the comments. In the UK, there are around 115,000 mailboxes, with some of them placed in questionable locations. Look here, we're on a deserted stretch of Caithness Moorhead, and here, just smack dab in the middle of nowhere, between the quarry and some moorland, stands a solitary mailbox. It was local teacher Chris Aitken who stumbled upon this oddity near Worth Hill, close to John O'Groats. Now, John O'Groats is a tiny village 2.5 miles northeast of Canisbay, in the historic county of Caithness, Scotland. The village itself is popular with tourists, but only houses around 300 people on a regular basis, and they have their own mailboxes there. So why would someone need one on a random hill? When Chris shared a photo online, someone chimed in with a theory. A while back, an entrepreneur was selling tiny parcels of land near Campster, claiming buyers became lairds with their little plots. Could this mailbox be related to that? Now, the box, proudly labeled Laird of John O'Groats, features the name Thorsten Sommer and an address in Germany. There's a PIN number on the front, but when Chris opened it, all he found was a website link. The site has pics of Sommer waving a Scottish flag and talking about his love for Scotland, even calling himself the Old Scotsman. Chris tried reaching out through the website for more info, but hasn't heard back. It might be linked to Sommer's reported purchase of a tiny patch of land, but buying Scottish laird titles is often seen as a fraud, giving no real title at all. The area around Worth Hill has had some recent police action too, after a body was found nearby. Ooh, could that somehow be connected to this mysterious mailbox too? Well, enough of the detective stories. Let's dive into some high-end fashion, shall we? So, you might have come across that funky image popping up all over the internet, claiming there's a pop-up Prada store in the Texas desert. Well, it's kind of true and kind of not. Yes, there's a shop, sort of. It showcased a whole range of Prada gear worth around $80,000. And guess what? Miuccia Prada herself handpicked the items. But still, you couldn't buy a single thing there. No cashiers, no shop assistants. It was like the place was permanently closed. The twist? It's actually an art installation. Made entirely of biodegradable materials, it was designed to gradually blend back into nature, taking a fun jab at our current consumer culture. But why display goods you can't actually buy? Well, it's a metaphor for the elusive charm of luxury. While it was meant to decay in peace, the hype surrounding it led to a surprising amount of foot traffic and even some chaos. After trying to fend off a few would-be thieves, the artist had to admit defeat. Now it's a hotspot for photos, drawing everyone from tourists to celebrities. Right, you can find a brand person in the desert, but can you, let's say, find a car somewhere in Welsh caves? Well, the answer is yes, and let me tell you, it's not just one car, but many of them. The Cavern of Lost Souls is a well-known abandoned car cave tucked away in Wales. Once upon a time, it was a slate mine in Ceredigion, where workers pulled out tons of slate and transported it using narrow-gauge horse-drawn tramways. But as the mining industry faded away decades ago, the mine fell into a hush. If you dare go inside, which I personally do not recommend, you'll find two large chambers, but one is particularly noteworthy. The main chamber plunges around 65 feet deep and is mostly underwater, with just a small opening above. Since the mine shut down, locals and the council have taken advantage of that opening, tossing in all sorts of unwanted stuff. You'll find everything from fridges and TVs to even whole cars piled up in one corner. What makes the Cavern of Lost Souls special is the single beam of light that breaks through, casting its glow on the twisted heap of wrecked cars and metal. The water, when hit by that light, glows a stunning turquoise green, creating beautiful reflections of the cars and cavern walls on the still surface. Every now and then, a fragment of slate falls, shattering the quiet and sending ripples across the water. There was yet another weird find in Wales. A shiny 10-foot silver monolith recently popped up on Hay Bluff in Powys, Wales, and it's sparking a ton of curiosity. A local builder, Craig Muir, discovered it during his hike, and he described it as looking like it just dropped down from space. It's made of surgical steel, has no markings, and is super well crafted without visible welds. Muir's find is reminiscent of those mysterious monoliths that popped up worldwide in 2020, creating quite a buzz online. Local Richard Haynes suggested it could be some kind of scientific installation, but with national park rules against unauthorized structures, it might not be there for long. With no visible tracks around it, Muir speculated it could have been brought in by a group or even dropped from a helicopter. Now, this isn't the first strange monolith sighting. Similar ones have been spotted in Utah, the Isle of Wight, and even Glastonbury Tor, where one was humorously marked, "Not Banksy." However, it could be easily him. The UK is the leading country in terms of the number of Banksy's pieces of art. As of 2023, there were 70 of them. No wonder, as he is reportedly British and was born in Bristol. The Atacama Desert in northern Chile, the driest non-polar desert on Earth, features a bizarre sight at kilometer mark 1309 on the Pan American Highway, a giant cement hand that towers 36 feet above the sand. Looks creepy, right? Well, worry not. It's not some creepy monster trying to grip you and take you to the netherworld. It's not an ancient relic from a lost civilization either. A professional sculptor created this quirky landmark back in 1992. Despite its remoteness, the hand is frequently targeted by graffiti, so local volunteers must clean it up twice a year. And by the way, it's not the only landmark of this kind. The very same sculptor also created a similar hand in Punta del Este, Uruguay, called Man Emerging to Life, and it represents the idea that a giant might be holding South America in a stone grip. Hey, works for me. Now check out this giant stone sphere hidden in the forest of Bosnia's Visoko Valley. What do you think? Is it an ancient relic or a modern art installation? Share your thoughts in the comments. But to be completely frank with you, which I always am, nobody really knows for sure. Experts think this sphere, which measures around 10 feet across, is just a naturally occurring rock formation called a concretion. These iron-rich balls get their reddish color from the high iron content and form when mineral particles stick together over time. While concretions can take on some pretty wild shapes, the exact process of how they form is still a bit of a mystery. Then there's this archaeologist, often called the Bosnian Indiana Jones, who claims it's actually a man-made artifact from over 1,000 years ago. Spherical concretions aren't unique to Bosnia, though. You can find them all over the world, like these boulders in New Zealand, massive round stones that are over 60 million years old. There are also cannonball concretions in North Dakota. And let's not forget about the man-made stone spheres crafted by the Diquis people in Costa Rica, which are perfectly shaped and arranged, definitely a testament to human creativity. So while the Bosnian sphere is super intriguing, it's probably just an ancient concretion and not a remnant of a lost civilization. Bummer. Finally, some things are so well hidden that you have to go deep down into the seafloor to get a glimpse of them. Once a hedonistic hotspot for the Roman elite, Baia was like the Las Vegas of its time, but now its ruins are submerged underwater. This resort city thrived on volcanic hot springs and attracted the likes of Nero and Caesar, who even built vacation villas there. However, in the 8th century, Baia lost a battle and was abandoned by 1500. As the water levels rose, much of the city was lost beneath the bay. Today, you can explore Baia's ancient ruins in one of the few underwater archaeological parks in the world. Hold your breath.
Hi there! I invite you to look at some of the coolest phenomena Mother Nature has. I'll start with the red sky. I admit that this scenery is kinda scary, as if it's a scene from a movie. How can our blue sky turn red? Zhoushan's authorities assured people that this abnormality wasn't related to solar activity. This tint appeared due to the refraction of red lights from fishing boats. That day, the weather was foggy and cloudy. The light got reflected from the low-hanging clouds. When weather conditions are right, aerosol particles and droplets of other liquids in the atmosphere refract and scatter the light. In this case, the light source was on fishing boats. Since we started with reflections, we can continue with a forest in Japan that looks as if it's come straight out of a fairy tale. It turns out there are real mushrooms that glow in the dark. They're known as forest fairies, but their official name is the Mycena lux sealy. They're bioluminescent fungi. It means that they glow. These mystical-looking mushrooms are scattered all over old trees and soft ground. You can see them in several different forests in Japan. They've been attracting tourists for many years, since they were first discovered in the 1950s. It makes me feel like I'm looking at a picture from a secret neon-themed party in the woods. Moving on from one mesmerizing forest to another, this one is underwater. There are lakes and there are forests. Kandy Lake in Kazakhstan offers you one inside the other. The lake is almost 100 feet deep. It has a beautiful turquoise lime color, and the submerged trees are seen below the surface. An earthquake in 1911 is the reason why this sunken forest formed. The quake created a huge limestone landslide that formed a natural dam. Rain and water filled the dam. The water covers the tree roots entirely, yet their top parts remain above the surface. This gives the lake a spooky vibe, especially if the weather is foggy. What does it look like under the water? Don't hurry to put on a scuba diving suit. No need to dive in, because you can see the lake's depths from the shore too. The water is super clear. There aren't many rotten tree trunks. In fact, the trees have miraculously resisted decomposition. You can even see the needles on their branches. You can thank the lake's consistent temperature for that. No matter the season, the temperature rarely goes higher than 43 degrees Fahrenheit. In the winter, the lake gets frozen, and people go fishing and ice diving. You can still enjoy the view through the crystal clear ice layer. The next dream destination is Bolivia. Imagine standing on a 4,000 square mile mirror. You can do that in Salar de Uyuni. It's the world's largest natural mirror, since it's a reflective salt flat. The surface is so flat as a result of thousands of years of transformations that happened to several prehistoric lakes. There are other lakes close by, and when they flow into this one, the flat surface turns into a, well, I'll say lake, but it's around 20 inches deep. Yes, the water layer is super shallow, but that's enough to transform the area into a giant mirror. For most animals, this area is non-habitable because of harsh living conditions. Yet flamingos visit this lake's chain of pristine lagoons to feed and breed. 3 out of the world's 6 species of flamingos come here. As you can guess, This is the perfect spot for photographers and tourists. They take cool pics of flamingos standing on the giant mirror lake. Would you like to see the Sea of Stars? Then you should visit the shores of Vadhu in the Maldives. Vadhu is a small island that'll surprise you at nighttime. Do you remember the glowing forest in Japan? Here we have glowing blue waves. The waves shine thanks to a natural chemical reaction called bioluminescence. Phytoplankton is the type of plankton that's responsible for the blue glow. It looks like the water shimmers when waves hit the shore. The next stop is in the southwestern U.S. This is The Wave in Arizona. It's a unique sandstone formation. The sediment has a rippling form and interesting colors. It's made of intersecting U-shaped troughs that have been eroded over time. The wave was formed millions of years ago. This one-of-a-kind formation is popular among hikers and photographers. Yet, it's not easy to visit this place. The formation has a fragile nature, so only around 60 people can visit it in one day. These people should apply for a permit and join the daily lottery system. Do these look like regular trees? Nope. The entire forest is technically one tree. This phenomenon is called clonal groves. All these trees are connected underground by a single root network. That's why trees look like they're copied and pasted with the help of Photoshop. Each trunk is genetically identical to the others. We're now looking at the most famous example of clonal groves, which is Pondo from Utah. It's one of the largest and oldest organisms on our planet. Pondo has 47,000 stems, and it originated from a single seed. It spread by creating new shoots from the expanding root network. Another mesmerizing phenomenon is this Indonesian volcano that has blue flames. It looks like the lava itself is blue when you first see it. In reality, the lava turns blue due to sulfur. When sulfuric gas meets with oxygen at an ultra-high temperature, it burns. Bright blue flames appear, and then lava flows through the mountain. This feature is visible at night. During the day, the lava looks like a regular orange liquid. Ice can come in different shapes and forms. Here is a less known one, the jewel ice. This type of ice can only be seen in Japan's Tokachi River. The river has crystal clear water in general. When the temperatures drop and the river freezes, ice chunks move with the waves to the riverside. These giant diamond-like ice pieces are transparent. That's why they reflect light differently. If you visit the lake at sunset, you'll see golden yellow ice stones. But at any other time of the day, they look blue. It depends on how light scatters in the sky. Another beauty comes with a winter breeze. If you step onto the frozen Abraham Lake in Canada, you'll see ice bubbles under a layer of ice. It might look like they're out of this world, but this beauty isn't so innocent. These ice bubbles are made of methane. Since this gas is flammable, these white orbs aren't perfectly safe. Why are there frozen methane bubbles in this lake? Well, it's due to the natural process of decomposition. Plants and parts of trees deep down at the lake's bottom decay. When this occurs, plants release methane, creating air bubbles. In the meantime, the temperature decreases. Ice bubbles can't reach the surface and get trapped in the ice. It looks kind of like a lava lamp. Even though it's winter and snow might fall, super strong winds wipe away everything from the lake's surface, so we can appreciate this potentially dangerous beauty. How about seeing some flaming rocks? Yanartas is located on an inactive volcano mountain in southwestern Turkey. The name of this rock formation is related to its appearance. It literally means flaming rock. The rocks have been flaming for at least 2,500 years, so they're full of tiny fumaroles that release gases such as methane. The gas ignites when it comes into contact with oxygen and creates eternal flames. Yanartas isn't the only special rock that produces eternal flames. There's a small waterfall in western New York that creates these types of flames too. The same principle applies to the Eternal Flame Falls. The grotto at the waterfall's base emits natural gas. Gas is the reason why flames form. Oh man, I want to see all these wonders with my own eyes. I just wish I could teleport.
Meet Hula Male, also known as the City of Hope. This nickname makes total sense since this artificial island is part of the Maldives' big plan to avoid being completely submerged in the near future. Hula Male was created by placing sand from the seafloor onto a submerged coral platform, and it worked. This city sits about 6 feet above sea level, which means it's twice as high as the Maldives' capital, Male. While more and more people are moving there to live, the island was also designed to serve as a temporary evacuation site during dangerous storms and typhoons. Seychelles is another gem in the Indian Ocean that's at risk of disappearing. Unfortunately, coastal flooding is becoming a common issue there, especially during spring tides and heavy rainfall. The problem is that their main island, Mahé, hosts about 90% of the country's population. Along the coast, it's only about 6 feet above sea level. Fiji is the third tropical paradise on our list, and it's also a top pick for travelers. But this nation is in a tough spot, since it's located right in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, where huge storms can really turn things into chaos. Take Cyclone Winston. It hit Fiji back in 2016 and ended up costing them over $1 billion in damage. So one thing they're doing to protect themselves is planting mangroves along the coast and preserving the ones that already exist. These trees are awesome since they help reduce wind speed during cyclone emergencies and also combat erosion by trapping sediments. Egypt might be in trouble too. I mean, it's not like the whole country is going to be underwater and we'll only see the tips of the pyramids in a few years. But things could really change for them as coastal cities are facing a serious risk. Take Alexandria, for instance. 45% of its population already lives below sea level. If the city is flooded, not only will everyone have to move, but Egypt in general will suffer a major impact on its fish production. In Europe, one of the most at-risk populations is in the Netherlands, where about half the people live in areas below sea level. In the future, planning a romantic gesture with tulips for your girlfriend could become an impossible mission. The Netherlands is responsible for 2/3 of the world's tulip production. So if fields are taken over by saltwater, it's game over for the blooms. But the good news is that the Dutch have centuries of experience dealing with water, so knowing how to work with storm barriers and seawalls can prevent them from a doomsday scenario. The risks of rising sea levels probably aren't higher anywhere else than here in Tuvalu. This island chain, located halfway between Australia and Hawaii, could be the first state to become uninhabitable. Its stunning land is only about 9 feet above sea level. And just by looking at it on the map, you can see how narrow it is. In fact, the narrowest part in Fongafale is only about 65 feet wide. So even before higher tides become a real problem, the country's limited farmland could be flooded with saltwater. The next country on our list is the Philippines. This archipelago in Southeast Asia boasts some of the most stunning scenery, but it faces the risk of flooding for 2 reasons. First, due to rising sea levels, and second, because of crazy, unpredictable weather. Since 1990, events like cyclones, earthquakes, and tsunamis have cost the country over $20 billion. Have you ever heard of Vanuatu? This chain of islands, spread out between Australia and Fiji, could be flooded soon. Vanuatu was one of the first Pacific nations to relocate an entire community to a safer spot. Back in 2005, residents living in risky coastal areas of the northern island of Tegua moved to higher ground. Next up, the Marshall Islands, a country located in the Central Pacific. Studies show that 40% of the buildings in the capital city, Majuro, could end up underwater in the future. But this country isn't throwing in the towel just yet. They've got a game plan. They are fortifying the infrastructures of their low-lying airport, relocating key buildings to higher ground, and putting up seawalls on rural islands. Heading south, we've got Nauru. This is actually one of the smallest countries in the world, covering just 8.1 square miles. Today, it's home to 10,000 people, but it's on the brink of becoming uninhabitable. Water levels are rising about 3 times faster there than the global average. The Buada Lagoon sparks special concern since it's the only surface freshwater resource, and it's located only 16 feet above sea level. Our next stop in the Pacific Ocean is the Republic of Palau. Rising sea levels are no joke for them either, but protecting their crops, especially taro, is a priority at this moment. About halfway between Hawaii and New Zealand lies Samoa, and this country is dealing with a unique situation. Not only is the volume of water increasing there, but their land is also sinking. You see, a couple of strong earthquakes and tsunamis hit Samoa back in 2009. So as the crust bounces back to its original position, the overall land surface is actually going down. Because of this, their housing and main infrastructure could take a serious hit, especially since all their airports are along the coast. Let's head to Kiribati. This Pacific nation has a big problem with frequent flooding because most of its people and infrastructure are near the coast. Apart from the volcanic island of Banaba, none of Kiribati's land is more than 6.5 feet above the ocean. To tackle this situation and keep their population safe, they had this big idea of making a massive floating platform, kind of like the ones oil companies have. But the problem is that it would cost them a fortune, as the project is estimated to be around $2 billion. If visiting Vietnam is on your bucket list, you better hurry up. The top 10 things to do there mostly involve cruising to jaw-dropping spots like down to Ha Long Bay, also known as the Descending Dragons Bay. But by 2050, the surrounding land over there might be underwater. Another huge problem Vietnam is facing is that the main rice fields are getting salty. And if you're into Vietnamese food, you know how important rice is for them. Right now, they're especially concerned about the Mekong Delta region being vulnerable. After all, this is a highly fertile area responsible for most of Vietnam's agricultural output, with over 50% of it being, rice. This nation is really putting in the effort to adjust to this new reality. They're flushing the rice fields in the Mekong Delta with fresh water to get rid of the saltiness. Our next stop is in the Caribbean Sea. Grenada is an island country, but you may know it as the Island of Spice, since its tropical climate is just perfect for cultivating things like nutmeg, cinnamon, cloves, and ginger. Unfortunately, Grenada and its incredible fertile soil also face an uncertain future of being submerged. Let's talk about the last country on our list, the Solomon Islands. 5 islands in this archipelago have already vanished beneath the waves, and 6 others are submerged by 20%. They include the Nusa Evili Island, which was once a hotspot to go to for a picnic in the early 2000s. Even though the situation is complicated, it's important to note that more than 300 of the islands there are inhabited. One thing about the Solomon Islands is that it seems like they're always in some kind of recovery mode, since the country often gets hit by tropical cyclones and flash floods. Their population is already working hard to save their homes from the rising seas by building stone walls along the coast, planting mangroves, and constructing houses in higher areas. No, you can't see the Great Wall of China from space. It's a cool myth, but it's still a myth and has nothing to do with reality. NASA confirmed it, and now you know it too. Still, the wall is a magnificent place, and you're lucky today. I'm taking you there, so fasten your seatbelts. We're going to China, the biggest Asian country, the 3rd biggest country in the world, and with over 1.3 billion people living there, is still the most populated one, even though India is getting closer and will probably take the first place soon. China is also one of the oldest nations in the world. It has 3,500 years of continuous written history, but the civilization existed long before that. Historians believe that China wasn't populated by settlers that came from somewhere else. The Chinese civilization most likely got formed from local Stone Age people who lived on the territory since the prehistoric period. So no wonder that the country is full of history and ancient landmarks, and I'll show you a couple. We are at the Great Wall. It's over 13,000 miles long. almost 5 times the distance between New York and Los Angeles, or a bit longer than the distance between North and South Poles. This is impressive, even today. Of course, it didn't take a day to build it. In fact, the wall was being built for centuries. Maybe you know that ancient cities had walls around them to protect the locals from the invaders? Yes, Chinese cities had them too. The first Chinese emperor united the country in 220 BC and got a brilliant but very ambitious idea to turn all city walls into one big wall that would defend the country's borders. So the process started. In the beginning, the wall was made of rammed earth and wood. Every next emperor would pick up the big wall project, strengthening and extending it, repairing, but also modernizing construction techniques. Some used brick to build the wall, some moved on to granite and marble blocks. Watchtowers and platforms weren't there from the beginning as well. They were added 19 centuries after the construction started. So the wall is quite inconsistent in terms of material, but it only adds more charm to the construction and shows how much effort and time it took. You can notice that some bricks have writing carved on them. They were left by the workers who were building the wall. The purpose of those writings is quality assurance. They contain such information as location, quantity, and responsible officials. So in case of problems with the quality of materials or constructions, it would be known who was responsible for that. Also, mind that the wall is poisonous. To prevent erosion of the wall by insects, arsenic, a poisonous chemical element, was used in construction. So better not lick it in case you had this weird urge. The construction stopped at the end of the 19th century because the wall lost its strategic and military importance in the world due to technological advances. Walls are way less efficient than they used to be, coming close to zero efficiency. So the construction lasted over 2,000 years, still making it the longest construction project in the world. Unfortunately, today the Great Wall isn't in the best shape. It's estimated that only 8% of the wall is in good condition, and the rest is considerably damaged. Also, around 1/3 of the wall has disappeared without a trace due to both natural erosion and human damage. Also, many bricks were taken away from it in the last century to use in building farms and homes. The wall is being deconstructed stone by stone even today, but this time by tourists. Quite a few of them take a stone as a souvenir. That's a total of a lot of stones, considering that over 50 million tourists visit the Great Wall every year. So we're not taking a souvenir from our today's trip, just preserving the memories. Let's now pay a visit to the Forbidden City. It's an imperial palace that took 16 years to build and was completed 600 years ago. To this day, it's the largest palace in the world. It has 980 buildings and over 8,000 rooms. Why forbidden? Well, centuries ago, ordinary people like you and me couldn't just walk the streets of that town, since it was considered a divine place and was home to the emperor. No one could enter or leave the city without the emperor's permission. Today, the Chinese more often refer to it as former palace, but of course in Chinese. I just can't pronounce that. The designs there aren't random at all. The details reflect the traditional Chinese architecture, and even the colors are chosen with the help of feng shui. The roofs of the city are yellow, which represents the supreme power of the emperor. Most walls and pillars of the city are red, representing fire, earth, and strong support. The floors there are made of so-called gold brick. These are not actual gold, but surprisingly, they are just as valuable. It's very hard to make them, and especially to copy the ancient technique. 2 original tiles from the Forbidden City were sold for 800,000 yuan. It's $115,000 US. You can also see animal statues on roofs. Just like colors, animals have meaning in Chinese culture. Dragons, phoenixes, and lions are the most powerful ones. Dragons symbolize strength and good luck and are crucial for the culture. They appear everywhere, in idioms, legends, astrology, art, and so on. In ancient China, emperors were considered sons of dragons. So it seems like the Targaryens aren't the only ones after all. And ordinary people weren't even allowed to have items with dragons. As for a phoenix, in Chinese mythology, their rare appearance during the ascent to the throne of a new emperor is a good sign of harmony. In feng shui, it's also a symbol of luck. and when used correctly, it's believed to bring positive energy to the house. Lions signify strength and power. They always come in pairs, a male and a female, and they're the guards. The number of animal statues on the roof signifies the importance of the building. The city is made of wood, and without any nails used, they are considered violent, so they aren't welcome. You can imagine that a wooden city is a serious fire hazard. A little fire and the city with a 6th century history will quickly turn to ashes. So, fire prevention is taken very seriously there. The city has a whole bunch of firefighting equipment, and there's even a special fire brigade that knows the whole layout of the city better than their own apartment and watches the city every day. Walking around the city, you can notice something very unusual. No birds are sitting on the roofs here, ever. When it was built, the birds were taken into account, and the engineers constructed the roofs in a particular way to ensure that no bird can land and sit on them. The roof spines are wider than the width of birds' claws, and the slope of each roof is higher. Also, the roofs are made of slippery tiles, so the birds can't land there. What do they have against the birds? Well, this way the city stays cleaner and looks more magnificent. So, there are no birds, but there are over 100 cats in the city. They actually are an important part of this story. Some of these kitties are royal descendants. You see, 2 royal dynasties that lived in the city kept cats. The dynasties later collapsed, but the cats stayed in the city and have lived there ever since. Of course, some stray cats have joined the royalty over the years. But hey, no one minds it, and no DNA test has been made to see who's royal and who's not. After all, they all equally patrol the city, hunt mice, and possibly some stranded birds, and guard the city. So all cats are welcome.
Hear that? Pretty annoying, isn't it? It's the sound at a frequency of 50 Hz. It's quiet, but permeates everything around. What if this hum followed you wherever you go throughout the day, week, month, around the clock? You can't sleep, you can't focus or study or work. You want to scream in frustration, but the sound continues to torment you. That would be awful. Unfortunately, this nightmare is a reality for the residents of the Scottish Isle of Lewis. Day and night, about 200 people go crazy over a strange low-frequency sound. They say it seems to be pulsating, causing headaches, dizziness, and the feeling of an existential crisis. And no one can find its source. The islanders decided to create a special Facebook group to discuss the causes of the sound, share their experiences, and support one another. One woman says the hum is impossible to ignore. It sounds like it's shouting in your face, demanding your attention. For this reason, she hasn't been sleeping well for several weeks. I understand. The island administration, as well as the residents, are powerless to solve this problem. Now, the locals used a spectrograph to study the hum. The device showed that the sound had a constant frequency of 50 Hz. It spreads all over the island, but it doesn't originate from within it. This means the source may be far away from the shore. An underwater laboratory? Testing some kind of a secret invention? A harsh experiment on people? An unknown sea creature? Ooh. People develop a lot of theories, but nothing helps. The country's top leadership may be aware of the nature of this sound, but they probably don't want to talk about it. It sounds like nonsense, but let's visit the small northern Irish town of Omagh. Its residents reported a constant buzzing that prevented them from sleeping. They just woke up in the middle of the night and heard this hum. The sound spread in different parts of the city, and no one knew its nature. People heard the sound every night, but fortunately, the city council coped with the problem. They found the source of the hum, but for some reason, they refused to tell the residents about their investigation. Moreover, they said the sound could return in the fall. The locals demand the truth. There's a big doubt that they will get it. Another case of a strange sound happened in Windsor, Canada. It's an industrial town located across the river from Detroit, Michigan. Its residents have been hearing the hum for many years. It sounds at such low frequencies and is so quiet that some residents often cannot understand, is the sound real or is it a hallucination? Other locals say the hum is so strong that it makes glassware rattle in the cupboards. Some people believe that some secret invention used to control the weather produces this sound. But the reality may be simpler. The most plausible theory claims that the source of the noise is on Zug Island. Blast furnaces located on the island release pressure and produce a strong rumbling sound. This is necessary to keep the equipment from exploding. Well, yeah. According to this theory, the sound gets reflected from metal drums and machines and then goes beyond the island and crosses the Detroit River directly into Windsor. It sounds realistic, but no one has confirmed this theory. Yeah, there have been investigations. The Canadian authorities compiled a report, but it was kept secret. The only thing the locals received was an official comment on the city's website. Quote, "While it is not possible to extract the exact source of the hum, possible sources may include quarry activity or industrial ventilation systems." End quote. But where did the version about the blast furnaces come from? They were mentioned in an abridged version of this report without any details getting disclosed. Another problem with the hum research is that Zug Island is located on private American territory. Scientists from Canada were banned from conducting investigations there. Canada, Ireland, Scotland. Anywhere else? Oh, yeah. The residents of Bristol, England have been hearing a mysterious hum since the 70s. And not only them, maybe you, the one who is watching this video right now, hear it too. If that's the case, then you're one of about 4% of the world's population affected by this problem. No, seriously, what's happening? Let's figure it out. The first mention of the hum appeared in the mid-70s in England. A small digression. The Industrial Revolution also began in England. Keep this fact in mind and we'll come back to it later. So, people perceived the hum of Bristol like a quiet, annoying sound. But over time, it began to drive the locals mad, and of course, they demanded a solution to the problem. There were investigations that led to nothing. One theory said that it was the noise of industrial fans working in a warehouse in a neighboring city. But the warehouse has been closed for a long time, and the hum is still there. In 2015, scientists suggested that ocean waves could cause the annoying sound. When they collide with ridges and continental plumes, they release a sound wave, blah blah blah. It's too far-fetched. Other scientists have suggested that vibrations caused by volcanic eruptions and earthquakes are the reason for everything. It also doesn't sound plausible. About 8 million lightning bolts strike the planet every day. These impacts create an electromagnetic charge. This energy causes the air between the surface and the ionosphere to resonate, and nope, that's all wrong. Sea waves, earthquakes, lightning? Seriously? Then why do so few people hear the hum? No, there must be something else here. There are many theories, but look at the whole picture. What do you see? In Ireland and Canada, the information about the hum is classified. It appeared in England in the 70s, and there are no earlier records of it. What does this tell us? The nature of the sound is not related to nature. It's about people and technology. England became the first industrial country. In England, the sound appeared for the first time. If this phenomenon had bothered people before, we would have found some records. It means it may have an artificial nature. Why would they hide any natural phenomena from us? What if the annoying hum is the consequence of our technological advances? Factories, cars, power lines, cell towers, airplanes, microwaves, power plants, all of these clog the air with sound waves. It's possible that all these things cause the hum, but only some of you can hear it. Listen carefully. Perhaps there's a buzzing hum in your ears too. Ooh. But let's not panic and end our video on a more positive note. While in some places the mysterious hum drives people crazy, in others it becomes the cause of a real celebration. Welcome to the bayside town of Sausalito in sunny, sometimes foggy, Northern California. In the 80s, a loud hum appeared here, which prevented people from sleeping. The investigation revealed that the cause of the hum was marine creatures. Thousands of toadfish swam to this place every year. These are fish that can emit unique sound waves. The human ear can't hear this sound from a single fish, but if there are thousands of them and they scream at the same time, then a whole town can hear their party. Sound waves come out of the water and reflect off the houses located next to the shore. From there, the wave spread further and can cover a huge territory. And that's what happened to Sausalito. Now, once people figured out the nature of the sound, they didn't look for solutions to get rid of it. They just decided to celebrate. The locals created the annual Humming Toadfish Festival, where they had fun and imitated the sounds of the fish. They dressed up as toadfish, toads, and other creatures. Unfortunately, the festival ceased to exist in 1990 because toadfish stopped coming to the city. They went to another place and only occasionally appeared on the coast. So there.
Archaeologists recently found something fascinating from a forgotten Maya kingdom, a tomb hidden in a collapsing pyramid. Inside, there was a king buried for 1,700 years, a jade mask that looks almost human, but not quite. And all this thanks to the looters who missed it by just 6 feet. They stumbled upon it in 2022 in the dense jungles near the border of Guatemala, Mexico, and Belize. In Mayan times, this little place used to be called Xochitlam. It's a lost city, half swallowed by jungle. This place meant pretty much nothing compared to other big Mayan cities, like Tikal or Teotihuacan, or so we thought. The team found a tomb of a Mayan ruler. The artifacts, the names of kings, all this revealed that Xochitlam wasn't just some tiny village. It was a pretty important place for that culture. And what they found inside that tomb may rival the treasures of any Maya metropolis. The tomb's ceiling had collapsed long ago, but the offerings were still inside and remained intact even after centuries. They recovered over 16 spondylus shells. These things were used by the ancient elite for power and rituals. That meant that whoever the tomb was related to, it was someone wealthy, of high status, who got themselves a ceremonial burial. Archaeologists also found carved femur bones. They were etched with hieroglyphs and names. Maya literally wrote their history in human remains. Researchers want to dive super deep and get a DNA analysis on the bones. Maybe that will help uncover familial ties, origins, or health problems these people might have faced. And most important of all, the mosaic jade mask. It was pieced together from luminous green tiles into an expression that feels almost human, almost alive. A lot of people were joking that it's just like Jim Carrey's mask in the famous movie. But it wasn't a magical artifact. That was the face of a forgotten Maya king, staring out at us after 1,700 years of silence. His name was etched into the femur bones, Itzam Kokaj Balam. Historians think this might be the ruler who reigned around 350 BCE. Unfortunately, this period is super underdocumented. We barely know anything about those times, but it looks like he was pretty important to the locals. One of the bones even showed a carved figure holding a deity's severed head. The deity's head looks exactly like the jade mask. Perhaps this was supposed to be the king himself, defeating some mythological villain. Other inscriptions mention the king's father and grandfather. That links Xochitlam to the mighty Maya capitals we mentioned, Tikal and Teotihuacan. Tikal was once the beating heart of the Maya world. It was a fascinating megapolis. A city rose from the Guatemalan lowlands with towering step pyramids that scraped the sky. That place was home to tens of thousands of people. It was also a hub of art, astronomy, and culture. The rulers were worshipped almost as living deities. Their deeds were carved into stelae that still stand amid the howler monkeys. Teotihuacan was located even further north. Now that was a mystery of another kind. It wasn't really Mayan, but rather Central Mexican. But still, that was a true metropolis, one of the largest cities in the world during its time. It was most famous for its Avenue of the Dead and colossal structures like the Pyramid of the Sun. It was a rich cultural center that had a worldwide influence. For centuries, both Tikal and Teotihuacan seemed to have completely different cultures. Tikal was a flourishing city-state where people loved reading, astronomy, and beautiful architecture. Teotihuacan was a titanic militaristic superpower. Two big centers of Mexico, separated by 600 miles of jungle and mountains. Compared to these imperial capitals, Xochitlam was a whisper. But it looked like this Itzam guy from the tomb wasn't just a ruler of a random village. He seemed to have political ties in ancient Mesoamerica. The craziest part is that we almost lost this piece of history, all because of the looters. At some point in the past, grave robbers had tunneled dangerously close. They stopped digging just 6.5 feet away from the tomb. That's just like in that meme with the diamonds. Sometimes you stop digging right before you hit it big. But in our case, thank heavens they didn't get there first. That's how close we came to losing a piece of history. In an almost poetic irony, it was the looters' tunnels themselves that led Estrada Belli's team to the site. Archaeologists have been looking around and using the so-called LiDAR technology. That's basically laser beams shot from high above, which help them map the spot. It's like taking X-rays of the jungle floor. And that's when they found the little signs of intrusion. They quickly realized that if someone was digging here, they were probably looking for something important. Without the failing looters, they might have walked past a discovery. In any case, archaeologists want to keep searching. They might even find more chambers buried inside the abandoned pyramid. We just keep finding mysterious things related to the Maya. Recently, buried deep within the ruins of Tikal, archaeologists found a house, and in that house, a limestone altar. It was covered in vibrant murals of red, yellow, and black. What's weird is that this build wasn't made by Maya. It was unmistakably Teotihuacan in style. And just like the tomb from before, it was made about 1,700 years ago. The altar was discovered inside a Maya-era residence known as Group 6DX7. It stood 3.5 by 6 feet right in the center of the home. That was very typical for Teotihuacan traditions. It bore a mural of the storm god. That was also a central deity in the Teotihuacan pantheon. But this altar depicted no kings and no rulers. That's very weird. As we said, Maya worshipped and honored their dynasties and political power, putting them pretty much everywhere, like some merch. But instead, this altar worshipped the deities alone, and it did so in the heart of Maya's main capital, Tikal. When archaeologists dived deeper, they saw it as unmistakable proof that Teotihuacanos not only came to Tikal, they thrived there. This house wasn't some trade outpost. People actually lived in it. Teotihuacanos built homes, practiced their rituals, and left their deities behind in this city. And Maya seemed to be chill about that. Researchers think this was a home for some elite people from Teotihuacan, or maybe it belonged to Mayans who practiced Teotihuacano culture and deeply respected it. But it might be something darker than a simple, friendly multiculturalism. The two cities weren't in the best relationship. There was some tension, maybe even surveillance. The house and the altar were probably built around 300 to 400 BCE. That was a period when Tikal was rising in power. This might have caught the attention of the mighty empire to the north. It's almost as if Mayans poked the beast. By 400 to 450 BCE, that attention may have become something sinister. The altar could have actually been the symbol of domination. Had the Maya of Tikal truly welcomed their guests, or did they come here and bluntly started building foreign altars in sacred spaces? Did Teotihuacan use this as some kind of soft invasion? In that case, it would make sense for Mayans to destroy that place or vandalize it somehow. Mayans regularly buried their buildings and rebuilt on top of them. But for some reason, this altar remained untouched. Mayans found it and buried it with the surrounding buildings as they were. No vandalism, no destruction, no rebuilding even. Looks like they had some complicated feelings about Teotihuacans. It was a time when cultures clashed, fused, overlapped, and possibly spied on each other. Perhaps one day we'll learn more about what really happened among these ancient civilizations.
There are mysterious plasma bubbles floating around the pyramids of Giza. As bizarre as that might sound, let's get one thing clear right off the bat. There's nothing extraterrestrial going on here. Plasma bubbles are those weather anomalies that form in a layer of Earth's atmosphere called the ionosphere. This is an invisible layer surrounding our planet that stretches roughly from 50 to 400 miles above Earth's surface, right at the edge of space. In this layer, the sun, being the giant hot power that it is, basically cooks gases, splitting them into electrically charged particles called plasma. Here's where it gets interesting. At night, especially near the equator, these charged particles get disturbed, and when a bunch of them suddenly vanish at the same time, it forms what we call a plasma bubble. Imagine it like a big empty pocket where the plasma is missing or its quantity is lowered. But it's only considered a plasma bubble if this phenomenon occurs on a large scale, typically around 62 miles in size. If you're already packing your suitcase for Egypt and have put binoculars to look at the tips of the pyramids, I'm sorry to say that we can't see these plasma bubbles with the unaided eye. It's all happening way above our heads, completely invisible to us. Scientists need to use special equipment, like the Latitude Long-Range Ionosphere Radar, or LARID, to detect these bubbles. This advanced technology helps researchers track and observe the movement and formation of plasma bubbles in real time. This formation, by the way, can be triggered by solar storms. That brings us to November 2023, when an impressive solar storm occurred. On a scale from 1 to 5, this one was classified as a G3, which is considered a strong event. Solar storms occur when sunspots are basically cooler, darker areas on the sun's surface, release bursts of energy into space. These flares triggered several geomagnetic storms on Earth. While this might sound like doomsday stuff, it didn't disrupt our daily lives too much. In fact, it was great news for skywatchers, since the solar storm created stunning auroras, with the northern lights visible as far south as Greece and Turkey. But this particular storm in 2023 also had another interesting consequence. It caused the largest plasma bubble ever recorded by the Chinese radar. This phenomenon was so massive that it covered regions as far apart as the Egyptian pyramids and the Midway Islands in the Pacific Ocean. Now that's a huge distance, and it is a big deal for science. And that's because plasma bubbles are a growing threat to modern technology. Experts say they can disrupt satellite communications and GPS systems. So if you're using Google Maps or Waze and suddenly it can't figure out where you are, a plasma bubble might be to blame. Great. We now know what's going on with those bubbles, detected above the pyramids of Giza. But things get even weirder inside this ancient construction. Apparently, the Great Pyramid of Giza has the ability to concentrate electromagnetic energy within its interior. A couple of years ago, a group of researchers decided to see what would happen if they took this ancient architecture and hit it with radio waves. I mean, waves that are similar to the kind your phone uses, but on a much larger scale, up to 1,900 feet long. But since they couldn't just start blasting radio waves at the actual pyramid, they did the next best thing: computer modeling. Using these simulations, the researchers discovered something incredible. The Great Pyramid can actually concentrate electromagnetic energy within its internal chambers, as well as underneath its base, where an unfinished chamber is located. By concentrate, I mean something like trap it. For example, when you shout into a cave, you hear your voice echo back, right? The sound waves don't just disappear, they bounce around and get focused. Similarly, when radio waves hit the pyramid, they don't just pass through or around it. Instead, they get absorbed, bounce around, and focus inside and underneath the pyramid. Our list of mysterious phenomena surrounding the Egyptian pyramids doesn't end there. Inside the pyramid, there's a long, narrow passage that leads to what's known as the King's Chamber. This room sits at the center of the pyramid, and it's believed to have been the final resting place of Pharaoh Khufu, the ancient Egyptian leader who commissioned the entire thing over 4,000 years ago. When visitors step into the King's Chamber, two things normally strike them: the room's incredible acoustics and its heavy, imposing structure, which is entirely lined with red granite. Recently, scientists have started to connect these two facts. Some researchers now believe that the king's chamber might be able to catch or pick up sound energy generated from other parts of the pyramid. In other words, this room might have been designed to amplify sound in a way that no other chamber in the pyramid can. To test this theory, researchers conducted an experiment where they sang in the Queen's chamber, which is located directly below the King's chamber. Here's where it gets wild. The music couldn't be heard in the lower underground rooms of the pyramid, but it sounded loud and clear in the King's chamber. One possible explanation for this is the type of stone used in the King's chamber: pink granite. Granite is known for its piezoelectric properties, meaning it can absorb energy from its surroundings, like sound vibrations, and convert it into electrical energy. This suggests that the chamber's unique acoustics might be due to more than just the shape of the room. It could be that the granite itself plays a role in amplifying and concentrating sound waves. According to scientists, these discoveries open up a whole new field of research into the pyramid's potential. Could the ancient pyramids have somehow harnessed the energy created by sound waves, or even Earth's natural vibrations? It might sound far-fetched, but considering the granite's piezoelectric properties are well documented in modern science, it's not entirely impossible. Who knows? Maybe we've only just scratched the surface of what the pyramids were truly capable of. Speaking of just scratching the surface, there's even more to think about, like how the pyramids ended up in such a perfect location. It seems the builders lined up the Great Pyramid with the cardinal points, meaning its sides are almost perfectly aligned with the four main directions: north, south, east, and west. There are many theories about how they did it, but one study suggests that Egyptians might have used the fall equinox to achieve this perfect alignment. During the equinox, the sun rises and sets directly in the east and west. It probably made it easier for builders to use the sun's position as a guide. By watching the sun during this time, they could make sure the pyramids were positioned just right. If we think about all these strange things about the pyramids, I mean their perfect alignment, the ability to concentrate radio waves, and the materials used in the chambers that might generate electrical energy, could the real purpose of the pyramids actually be much more complex than just being tombs? Well, Nikola Tesla thought so. It is said that the famous inventor and engineer was kind of obsessed with the Egyptian pyramids, and he wondered if they might actually be giant energy transmitters. He believed the shape and position of the pyramids could help them function as huge generators, capable of producing free, limitless energy. Some researchers agree with Tesla and believe that these massive monuments might have been designed as giant power plants. According to their theory, builders could have figured out how to move ions, those electrically charged particles in the atmosphere, by placing materials like copper, gold, and silver around the pyramids. So, it's definitely possible that the ancient Egyptians created a sustainable, renewable power source. Although this is a very interesting thought, we haven't been able to confirm this theory, and the true purpose of the pyramids remain one of humanity's biggest mysteries.
In 2011, scientists from Chile found a weird-looking fossil in Antarctica that looked like a squashed football. Almost 10 years later, the rock just sat on a shelf in Chile's National Museum of Natural History with no specific label. It went by The Thing in the museum because it looked like something from a science fiction movie. When the scientists finally got their hands on the strange fossil, it turned out it was actually a giant soft-shell egg from around 66 million years ago. This one is more than 11 inches long and 7 inches wide. A regular chicken egg is just 2.5 inches long, and an ostrich egg is almost 6 inches long for comparison. So, The Thing won the title of the biggest soft-shell egg ever found and the second largest egg of any animal we know of. The only bigger egg that was ever found was that of the extinct Madagascan elephant bird, which is also 1.5 times as tall as Michael Jordan. The bird, not the egg. The Antarctic egg is also special because it's the first fossil ever found in this part of the world. So, whoever left it there must have been one big creature. Probably a giant sea turtle that lived long ago, like a mosasaur. This is surprising because most scientists thought these creatures didn't even lay eggs, so this discovery could change what we know about them. The egg is also unique because it has a thin eggshell and no pores, which is totally different from most dinosaur eggs. It actually looks more like the eggs of lizards and snakes, but it came from a giant creature related to these animals. No known dinosaurs or flying reptiles from that time and place were big enough to lay such a huge egg, so it must have been a mosasaur after all. But we can't be 100% sure. Scientists did a lot of work and studied 259 types of living reptiles, like lizards and snakes, and their eggs. From this, they figured out that the mommy who laid the egg was probably at least 23 feet long, not counting her tail. During the late Cretaceous period, this part of Antarctica might have been like a nursery. Paleontologists have found bones of tiny mosasaurs and plesiosaurs in the same area, along with bones from the grown-up ones. Archaeologists in Norway made another cool but literally discovery and found dozens of arrows that had been hidden in ice for 6,000 years. They were melting out of a large ice patch in the high mountains, covering an area of about 45 football fields. In 2014 and 2016, when the summers were extra warm, scientists went to an ice patch called Langfoni to look around. They also found lots of reindeer bones and antlers there. Some of the arrows were whole and some in pieces, along with 5 arrowheads around the melting ice patch. This is more arrows than have been found at any other frozen site in the world. Some of the 68 found arrows date back to the Neolithic period, and the newest ones are from the 14th century of the Common Era. Ice is like the perfect time machine that can preserve whatever ends up there in an almost perfect condition. Langfoni became famous as one of the first ice patch sites after a local hiker found a 3,300-year-old leather shoe right next to its edge. Scientists are studying places like this to understand how people used these sites and how the ice patches from Norway to North America changed over time. Now, once upon a time, around 32,000 years ago, to be exact, a squirrel buried some seeds near a river in Siberia. Am I the only one getting the Ice Age vibes? Anyway, these seeds belong to a plant with cute white flowers. Thousands of years later, a group of scientists found these seeds buried deep in the frozen ground, about as far down as a 12-story building is tall. The seeds were surrounded by ice and bones of animals like mammoths, bison, and woolly rhinoceroses. The mature seeds had been damaged, maybe by some squirrel, but some of the younger seeds still had good plant parts inside them. The scientists carefully took those out and put them in small containers to help them grow. And here comes the coolest part. They were able to grow the plants. Their flowers were shaped a little differently from the flowers of the same plant that grows today. After a year, the Ice Age plant even made new seeds. Based on this, the scientists suggested that permafrost could be a depository for an ancient gene pool, and we could find extinct species there and bring them back to life. Scientists on an icebreaker in Antarctica were looking for whales, but found something way more unusual. The camera behind the ship, which is as heavy as a car, detected 16 million icefish nests on the floor of the Weddell Sea. The nests were located about every 10 inches in all directions and covered an area of 93 square miles, which is slightly bigger than the whole of Washington, D.C. The colony even had a distinct border, which was a line in the sand. The scientists were in the area because they were studying a special spot in the ocean where the water was a little warmer than the water around it. In this warmer water, they found tiny animals called zooplankton near the top. When the young icefish hatch, they swim up to this area to eat the zooplankton before going back down to the seafloor to grow up and have their own offspring. Since there was so much food, it made sense to see icefish in this warm water. But they didn't expect to find such a huge number of icefish nests, much more than anyone had ever seen before. New Zealand's Antarctic Heritage Fund found some old photo negatives in a hut in Antarctica. They turned out to be unique images from the Ross Sea Party. It was a famous failed expedition led by Ernest Shackleton. He wanted to become the first person to cross Antarctica by land, from the Weddell Sea to the Ross Sea, passing through the South Pole. But things went wrong when their ship, the Aurora, was blown out to sea. They had to use the hut from another explorer, Captain Robert Falcon Scott. His goal was to be the first person to reach the North Pole, but sadly, he didn't succeed either. The negatives were made of cellulose nitrate and were found stuck together in the small box. The Trust took the negatives back to New Zealand, where they carefully separated them and discovered 22 hidden images. Many of the photos were damaged, but the Trust could still recognize some familiar places around McMurdo Sound, a well-known area in Antarctica. No one knows for sure who took the pictures. In December 2021, some scientists noticed a strange mark on the Larsen Ice Shelf, a giant sheet of ice off the eastern coast of Antarctica. They thought it might be a river flowing under the ice, so they drilled down over 1,600 feet to check it out. They expected to find water, but they didn't expect to see that the water was full of fast-moving creatures called amphipods. The scientists also found that the water in the underground river had unusual layers of currents moving in different directions, which they still don't fully understand. Another surprising thing happened during their research. On December 20th of the same year, a volcano erupted far away in Tonga, and the pressure waves from the eruption were detected all the way down in the ice river in Antarctica. It shows how everything on our planet is connected, even in the most distant places.
Some mistakes have the power to change the course of history. One such story has to do with an old, boring key that could have saved the Titanic from its infamous demise. The key belonged to the crow's nest locker that housed binoculars, which could have helped the lookouts spot the iceberg sooner. There's more. The key wasn't even on board the ship when it set sail. The second officer took it with him when he was taken off the ship at the last minute. As the story goes, the officer forgot to hand the key over to his replacement in his hurry to disembark. So, when the lookouts were in desperate need of binoculars, they were out of luck. One of the lookouts, named Fred Fleet, even testified that if they had had binoculars, they would have spotted the iceberg in time to avoid it. And when asked how much sooner, Fleet replied, "Enough to get out of the way." In 2015, some auctioneers got their hands on Blair's key and presented it as one of the most important artifacts from the Titanic. They truly believed it could have saved the ship. Blair kept the key as a souvenir and passed it down to his daughter, Nancy. At one point, it was up for auction with a price tag of over $80,000. Blair himself was quite the hero, it seems. A year after the Titanic disaster, he was awarded a gallantry medal for saving a crewman who had fallen overboard while he had been on board the liner Majestic. He may have forgotten a key, but he sure didn't forget to be a hero when it counted. This next story is both funny and tragic. It's about NASA's lost $125 million Mars Climate Orbiter. The spacecraft engineers failed to convert from English to metric measurements before the craft was launched, and as a result, they lost it. The navigation team at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory used the metric system of millimeters and meters, while Lockheed Martin Astronautics in Denver used the English system of inches, feet, and pounds. JPL engineers mistook acceleration readings measured in English units of pound-seconds for a metric measure of force called Newton-seconds. What's worse is that none of JPL's quality control procedures caught the error in the 9 months it took the spacecraft to make its 461 million-mile flight to Mars. That's a long time to be lost in translation, don't you think? The miscalculations were enough to throw the spacecraft so far off track that it flew too deeply into the Martian atmosphere and was destroyed when it entered its initial orbit around Mars. It's embarrassing to lose a spacecraft to such a simple math error. And it's hard to think of another example of such a large loss due to English versus metric confusion. Ever heard about the mathematical mistake that led to the discovery of the New World? Spoiler alert, it involves a guy named Christopher Columbus and a really big globe. Back in 1492, Columbus set sail from Spain with a mission to find a new trade route to Asia. He was convinced that he was less than 3,000 miles away from Japan, and just a bit more sailing would get him to the Indies with all their tasty spices. The only problem was that Columbus was a bit off in his calculations, like way off. He made a mistake in estimating the size of the globe, which led him to believe that Earth was far smaller than it actually is. Now I know what you're thinking. Wasn't Columbus afraid that he would fall off the edge of the world? Contrary to popular myth, Columbus and his crew knew the Earth was a globe, just like the ancient Greeks did 2 millennia earlier. They weren't worried about falling off the edge, but rather about the size of the ocean they planned on crossing. And to make matters worse, Columbus had no idea that an unknown landmass existed between Spain and Asia. After weeks at sea, Columbus finally reached the Caribbean. He believed that he had landed on the outskirts of Asia, and so named the islands the West Indies. He went on to explore the Caribbean and the northern coast of South America. But here's where things get really interesting. Even though Columbus insisted until his last day that he had reached Asia, another Italian explorer named Amerigo Vespucci mapped the eastern shore of South America down to Brazil and proved conclusively that Columbus had actually discovered a whole new world. A German mapmaker saw Amerigo's maps and labeled the new landmass America after him. And since his maps were super popular at the time, the name stuck. One man named Alexander Fleming stumbled upon one of the most significant medical discoveries of all time by accident. At one point in his career, Fleming observed the demise of many people from uncontrollable infections. Antiseptics were used to fight this, but they often did more harm than good. In 1922, while he had a cold himself, Fleming transferred some of his, nasal discharge to a petri dish and left it on his cluttered desk. When he finally examined it weeks later, he found that an enzyme had some antimicrobial properties. It wasn't until 1928, when Fleming left an uncovered petri dish next to an open window, that he stumbled upon the discovery that would change the world. The dish became contaminated with fungus spores. And when he examined them under the microscope, Fleming discovered that the bacteria near the fungus were dying. He managed to isolate the fungus and found that it was effective against numerous things that caused diseases. And thus, penicillin was discovered. As Fleming himself put it, "I did not discover penicillin. Nature did that. I only discovered it by accident." Talk about a lucky break. In the early 1520s, the east coast of the United States of America was a big mystery waiting to be solved. The Spanish found Florida, and the English and Portuguese found Newfoundland, but the area in between was like a blank spot on the map. France decided to take action and sent an expedition to explore the area. They chose a guy called Giovanni da Verrazzano to lead the trip. For this expedition, he got 4 ships. Unfortunately, 2 of them were shipwrecked, and a third one went home after doing some other business on the Spanish coast. Only the flagship, La Dauphine, crossed the Atlantic with Verrazzano and his 50-man crew. Verrazzano set sail from Madeira and landed at Cape Fear. From there, he sailed south, but got a little scared of running into the Spanish, so he returned somewhere north of Charleston. He anchored not far from his original landing spot, but unlike other explorers, he preferred to anchor well out at sea. He did send a boat to the shore, and he met the natives. They were described as wearing just some animal skins covering their bodies and garlands of bird feathers. As Verrazano sailed along the coast, he reached the outer banks of North Carolina. He thought that the waters he discovered were those of the Pacific. In reality, what he'd stumbled upon was the Pamlico Sound. He thought that North America was just a long, extremely narrow strip of land. This mistake led mapmakers to show North America as almost completely divided in two. Moving on, Verrazano reached a beautiful place that he called Arcadia. Probably Kitty Hawk, North Carolina. Sailing further north, he missed the entrances to Chesapeake and Delaware Bays because he kept quite far from the coast until New Jersey. Then, the moment we've all been waiting for, Verrazano discovered New York Harbor, and he anchored in the Narrows. Later, it was named after him, and now it is spanned by the Verrazano Narrows Bridge. Once Verrazano's sea appeared on the map, it became widely accepted and impacted loads of future explorers. For example, Henry Hudson went looking for a passage to the Pacific in the middle latitudes of the continent. But, as it turns out, the Englishman never did find the Pacific Ocean anywhere near Virginia. And the cartographic myth eventually faded away. It's funny to think about how a mistaken belief could have such an impact on history. Back in the 1800s, a bunch of super old artifacts with some weird symbols on them were found on Easter Island. You know, that tiny island you might have heard of, with the gigantic statues called the moai. These symbols seem to be some kind of writing, but nobody's been able to figure out what they mean yet. Some scientists even think that if we crack the code, we might finally uncover the secrets behind the downfall of the ancient Easter Island society. So let's put on our detective hats and get to work, shall we? This mysterious script is called the Rongo Rongo. It was discovered by a Frenchman in the 19th century. He stumbled upon 26 wooden tablets covered in weird hieroglyphs during his trip to the island in 1864. The locals seem to have drawn pictures of animals they had never seen before on the tablets, using sharp stones, and gave each one a unique name. He thought they were pretty cool, and suspected that they might be a remnant of some ancient writing system. Another fun fact about Rongo Rongo. It's a word that comes from the local language of Easter Island, and it means to recite, to declaim, or to chant out. The wooden tablets on which these glyphs were found might not have been in the best shape when they were discovered. Some were weathered, burned, or damaged. The glyphs were also spotted on a Birdman statuette and 2 other ornaments. These words were written in between lines on the tablets. Some of them were even ridged, with the inscriptions falling within channels created by the fluting. The images themselves are shaped like humans, animals, plants, and geometric shapes. Quite a diverse group. And here's something interesting. Every symbol with a head is oriented with the head facing up, either forward or to the right. The orientation of the writing is itself weird. According to a local tradition, the tools used to make the carvings were obsidian flakes, or small shark teeth. Deciphering these glyphs has proven to be a bit of a head-scratcher. 3 big barriers make it tricky: the limited number of texts overall, the lack of illustrations and context to help us understand them, and the fact that the language used on the tablets is not well known. Some people even think that these glyphs aren't real writing, but more like fancy symbols that don't have any real language behind them. It was also suggested that they might have been used as a sort of memory aid, or just for decoration. The way they're so carefully carved into the tablets makes it clear that the people who made them wanted to get a message, whatever that is, across. We'll probably never know whether that message was just for funsies, or to pass down important stories from one generation to the next. Researchers have been struggling with this ancient script for a while now, but it seems they've made some progress recently. They took a look at the tablets using all sorts of cool techniques like radiocarbon dating, and found out that they were made between 1810 and 1870 from local wood. One tablet, in particular, was in pretty rough shape, but the scientists created a 3D model and managed to spot some hidden glyphs that weren't visible before. One researcher said they found some grooves that were probably used for writing, just like drawing lines on a blank piece of paper to make sure your writing is perfectly horizontal. Another super mysterious script that scientists have yet to decipher is called the Indus Valley Script. It's made out of a bunch of symbols that were used by the ancient Indus Valley civilization, but specialists are not entirely sure what their purpose was. For starters, the symbols are crazy short, so it's hard to figure out if they represent a full language system. Also, there's no other similar writing to compare it to. Various inscriptions from different periods also show that it hasn't changed much over time. Some folks think it might not even be language related at all, while others think it could be part of the Dravidian family of languages typical of South Asia. Linguists have also been working for centuries trying to figure out the mysterious hieroglyphics left behind by the Maya on monuments, pottery, and bark paper books. As we decode more and more of these ancient symbols, we're gaining a deeper understanding of the Maya civilization's social and historical aspects. For the longest time, many scholars thought that the Maya script wasn't even a language at all. Who can blame them though? Those glyphs are seriously complex and visually striking. But thanks to the groundbreaking work of a skilled ethnologist in the 1950s, we now know that the script is phonetic. It's a way of spelling words where each letter represents a sound you make when you say it out loud. As more and more linguists started taking an interest in the script in the 70s and 80s, it became clear that it was a fully functioning writing system that could express any spoken sentence with clarity. There's still a lot of decoding left to be done though, with countless carvings and inscriptions still waiting to be deciphered in jungle ruins and museum closets. There's no telling what other secrets we might uncover about this fascinating civilization. Back in 1908, an Italian archaeologist went on an adventure through the ruins of an ancient palace on the south coast of Crete. Among the dust and ashes in an underground depository, he stumbled upon something pretty cool, a golden-hued disc that was almost intact. This disc has become one of the most famous mysteries in archaeology history. It's called the Phaistos disc. It's a big clay plate that's covered on both sides with a spiral of weird stamped symbols that circle clockwise towards the center. These symbols are pictograms that show all sorts of things, like a person walking, a tattooed head, a helmet, an arrow, manacles, cats, eagles, and more. But here's the kicker. Nobody has been able to translate the symbols. Since then, many scholars have made attempts to decipher the code, but no luck so far. It's thought that the symbols might be part of Linear A, a script unconnected to any known language. But some experts suggest it could be syllabic writing related to various other languages, like Homeric Greek or Indo-European. Thousands of years ago, there was a mysterious European culture called the Vinca culture. These folks were so cool that they even had their own writing system, which is still one of the earliest known in the world. But there's a catch here too. You guessed it, no one has been able to decipher their script yet. The Vinca culture thrived thousands of years ago, and they were located in today's Eastern European territory. They got their name from the village of Vinca, which was only a small distance downstream from Belgrade on the banks of the Danube River. A team of Bulgarian archaeologists found recently a 7,000-year-old inscription covered in Vinca script. It's the oldest find of its kind in Europe. These symbols were carved into a ceramic tile, and researchers believe they carry information about the local calendar and important events. The Vinca culture was seriously advanced. They even knew how to write on wet clay using a sharp object. It doesn't seem like much these days, but it's a lot to expect from people who lived thousands of years ago. The Voynich manuscript also caused quite a debate between linguists and historians. Is this old book proof of a long-forgotten civilization, or just a clever prank? This manuscript is full of text that even the smartest code breakers haven't been able to figure out. Written way back in the 15th century, it was discovered by a book dealer named Wilfred M. Voynich back in 1912, hence the name. If it's a trick, it's truly convincing. The handwriting is beautiful, and there are even patterns in the text that match up with other languages.
On August 2, 1996, huge, mysterious patterns appeared on an agricultural field in Chiselden, England. No one knew what kinds of symbols those were and who left them. As soon as the local news reported this, people immediately began to make their guesses. The most popular version was a message from a civilization living on another planet. The first crop circles appeared in the 70s in many areas across the US and England. Some compared these symbols to the writings of the ancient Maya. Others thought those were messages about the approaching apocalypse. But few doubted that their authors were from another civilization. But that geometric pattern in Chiselden was different from all the others because of an event that happened 8 years later. In 2004, a man from New Mexico found a strange stone 11 miles from Roswell. The rock had the same pattern on it as the crop circle in Chiselden. It's worth noting that Roswell became a famous place after, according to rumors and legends, a spaceship from another planet crashed there. Therefore, when the farmer found the stone and posted its photo on the internet, many people thought it was part of that spaceship. The stone was perfectly smooth, and the pattern was applied with incredible precision. But the most remarkable thing was its magnetic properties. It rotated counterclockwise when people put the magnet next to its northern part. When they left the magnet near the southern side, the stone turned in the other direction. Computed tomography and X-rays showed that there hadn't been any elements inside the stone that could cause rotation. It was just a smooth piece of rock. But was the Roswell rock really part of a spaceship? To answer this question, we need to move to England, the year 1976. An artist named Doug Bauer met his friend Dave Corley and invited him to create an impressive performance. At that time, people only learned about strange patterns in the fields from some books and records. And of course, none of these cases had been confirmed. The two friends understood that all this was nothing more than myths. Therefore, they decided to draw a big pattern in a wheat field in Wiltshire. Now, they didn't expect this drawing to become so popular. Many newspapers began to write about mysterious circles. Hundreds of reporters filmed it on their cameras, and people watching TV were shocked. From that moment on, crop circles became a cultural phenomenon. People mixed facts with fiction and created more and more unbelievable legends. Someone said that they had seen mysterious lights in the sky above the circles. In any case, those two friends continued to draw patterns and revealed their secret only in 2009. They also created the mysterious drawing in Chiselden, but that Roswell rock wasn't their job. Anyway, they said that the stone was also a fake. Other artists could draw the same pattern on the rock using stone-cutting equipment. One of the most mysterious books in the world is the Voynich manuscript. Nobody knows who its author was, but they wrote it in the 15th century. No one can understand the contents of this manuscript, consisting of 240 pages, for more than 500 years. Now, just imagine all the words were written in hand in an unknown language. Almost every page is decorated with strange images of female figures and weird unknown plants. The book was first discovered in 1912 and immediately became a cultural phenomenon. Many scientists, polyglots, and historians have tried to decipher the language and understand its meaning. They put it on the internet so everyone could try to solve the mystery. And it seems that Nicholas Gibbs, a historian and writer, managed to do this. He spent many years studying medieval Latin language and literature. Gibbs noticed the manuscript contained Latin abbreviations often used in medieval medical papers and reference books. Gibbs even found out that the book was a plagiarism of other older medical reference works. He compared the Voynich manuscript with other Latin books and found many similar words. Gibbs claimed that the manuscript was dedicated to women's health, and the mysterious flowers were real herbs and plants. But it wasn't that simple. Nicholas Gibbs was one of many who put forward the theory. Many scientists recognize his version as banal and unconvincing. Other decoders claim that some secret code was used in the manuscript. Some were sure it was written by Dominican nuns. Others described it as a reference book on astrology and herbs. Anyway, you can find scans of the manuscript in high resolution on the internet and try to crack the code yourself. Imagine that you're walking around New York and entering a dark, deserted alley. Then you see some canvas with a beautiful picture on it lying in a trash can. You don't really understand what exactly is depicted there, but you still feel some power of art emanating from it. You take the painting home and hang it on the wall. It's been hanging there almost 4 years. Then you publish a photo with the painting on the website with antiques and discover that this picture is a missing masterpiece worth $1 million. This is a real story that happened to a New Yorker in 2003. Famous Mexican artist Rufino Tamayo painted this picture called Three People in 1970. One collector bought it as a gift for his wife. But in 1989, someone stole the work while they were moving to a new house. It was possible that the thief didn't appreciate this piece of art or couldn't find a buyer, so they threw it into the nearest trash can. The woman who found it returned the work to the owner and received a $15,000 reward. Expensive paintings often end up in trash cans. Van Gogh gave his works to various people, but they didn't take them seriously at that time. When these paintings were found many years later, they were estimated at tens of millions of dollars. For example, the artist gave his doctor his portrait. The doctor was horrified by the painting. Perhaps he didn't like the red shade of the hair. He gave the portrait to his mother, and she found a use for it. She covered the hole in her chicken coop with the picture. For more than 10 years, chickens had been running under the work of art. Then another artist found the painting. He paid the doctor pennies for it. Now, it's estimated at $50 million. A similar case with a discarded work of art occurred in Italy. A gardener who worked at the Ricciardi Gallery of Modern Art was removing ivy from the building's walls and found a rusty metal door in the thicket. He opened it and got into a dark room. There was a garbage bag lying there. The gardener wanted to throw it in the trash, but decided to look inside first. And he found the lost work of famous artist Gustav Klimt. During the renovation of the gallery in 1997, someone stole the painting, Portrait of a Lady. It turned out that the thief had never taken it out of the building. Its value is estimated at $66 million. In 1901, collectors of sea sponges discovered a mysterious chest in the sea near Greece. There was a strange object inside, similar to a mechanical watch and the size of a shoebox. The finding attracted the attention of archaeologists. They quickly established that this item was created in ancient Greece about 2,200 years ago. They called it the Undeciphered mechanism. Now it's in the National Archaeological Museum in Athens. Scientists have found out that this object is only 82 fragments, 1/3 of the original mechanism. It's still unknown who created it and how it works. But experts think it was a mechanical computer with bronze gears and other parts. People use it for astronomical calculations. The device could track the movements of the Sun, the Moon, and 5 planets of the solar system. Experts are still trying to figure out all the properties of this machine. It's considered to be the oldest computer on Earth. It proves that the level of technology 2,000 years ago was much higher than we could imagine. You know, there are many doors all around the world that have no keys. Maybe you can guess how to open them. The first destination is, okay, read this, and good luck to you. It's a temple in India. The temple's name comes from this other really long word, which can be translated as the one emerging from the lotus. This temple is one of India's most popular and sacred places. It's one of 108 temples of this word. It dates way back. It was mentioned in Tamil literature in the 6th century. Flash forward to our time. In 2011, the Indian Supreme Court decided to document the valuables of the temple because they had been informed that the place might have been misused. To do so, they had to open the doors that had been closed for centuries. The committee went to the temple and discovered 6 huge secret vaults that held unbelievable treasures. After the chamber doors opened, they found at least $22 billion worth of golden idols, necklaces, and coins. The officials also discovered ceremonial costumes and gold coconut shells with jewels. Plus, they saw large diamonds. Not our understanding of large, though. Some of these precious stones were as large as 110 carats. To put it in perspective, a small solid gold statue from the collection could be worth around $30 million. After this fairy tale-ish treasure had been discovered, the temple got equipped with metal detectors, cameras, and other safety precautions before the first visitors started to arrive. Now, there are a lot of security guards at the temple. But are they protecting the treasure, or is there something more mysterious hiding behind its doors? The temple has 6 chambers, and the valuables are kept there. These rooms are named Chambers A through F. The expedition committee opened 5 of these vaults with significant effort. But the most bizarre thing is that, despite all the efforts involving existing tech, the mysterious Chamber B still wouldn't open. On the side of the door, 2 carved cobras are welcoming you. The door works as a gate. You can easily see it with the unaided eye, just like the doors leading to other chambers. Surprise! Experts discovered 2 more doors behind the first one. The second door is wooden, and the last one is made of iron. Strangely, the last door was sealed. It also doesn't have any means of entry, no bolts, handles, latches, or anything else. To this day, no one knows what's inside Chamber B. Believers say that opening the door against its will can release into the world unnamable things. Others say that Chamber B may hide a tunnel. It might not be related to the reasons above, but the High Court of India warned against opening the doors of Chamber B. Now, in 2010, David Crespi, a French engineer, visited Machu Picchu. He discovered a strange door in one of the main buildings. The door was in a narrow path neither tourists nor archaeologists used very often. David believed that the place was an entrance the Incas had sealed for some reason. He contacted archaeologists and authorities right away. They promised him to start investigating the area in the near future and let him know about his potential discovery. Well, months passed, but he didn't get any news. No response to his emails and calls. In 2011, he found an article by Terry Jamin about Peru. David reached out to him in no time. He described his finding to Jamin. After that, Jamin and other archaeologists went to Machu Picchu to investigate the secret door. They concluded that this door was indeed an entrance sealed by the Incas. The researchers confirmed the existence of 2 entrances found behind the famous door. They also got the 3D representation of a staircase leading to the main room and another chamber. The analysis also revealed several cavities, among which there was a vast quadrangular room. Plus, georadars detected some metals. Those might be golden and silver objects. Jamin and his team thought this place was a chamber of pre-Hispanic times. They believed the door had been sealed by the Incas to hide something important. Maybe an enormous treasure, or something no less precious. Jamin also claimed that finding this chamber could lead to the discovery of a mausoleum. Jamin submitted an official request to the Peruvian authorities for permission to open the chambers. Yet, neither his application nor requests of other archaeologists have been approved so far. Authorities claim that opening this door could cause damage on the other sides of the archaeological site. Yet, the use of an endoscopic camera has confirmed the hypothesis that the stone blocks at the entrance are only there to close the passage. They are not there to support the internal structures of the building. The third mystery is in Giza, Egypt. Explorers uncovered 2 secret doors inside the Great Pyramid. There are 2 tunnels, each around 8 inches wide, that go from the north and south walls of the Queen's Chamber. But the tunnels are closed by stone blocks before they reach the outside of the pyramid. So, where are they leading to? No one really knows the true purpose of these tunnels. Some archaeologists think these doors might be hiding a yet undiscovered chamber. Egyptologist Zahi Hawass explained how these doors were first found. A robot designed for this expedition was sent inside the shafts of the Queen's Chamber to find out what was there. The research team attached a camera to the robot. The footage revealed that behind the stone door, there was another sealed door. The archaeologists were thrilled to see this door instead of just a dead end. The structure of the stone door blocks the other doors perfectly. Experts think it's an incredible bit of engineering. Now, it's not possible to reach the door because it's behind a huge stone block. But archaeologists are trying to find a way to get there without damaging other parts of the structure. These new discoveries have only raised more questions instead of answering the already existing ones. Secrets are still waiting to be revealed. Our final stop is the Taj Mahal, a monument to love. Mughal Emperor Shah Jahan made this memorial to honor the memory of his beloved wife, Mumtaz Mahal. The total number of doors in the Taj Mahal is so great, this video would be days long if we started talking about all the sealed rooms. Experts think that if someone opened these doors after they've been closed for so long, it'd release carbon monoxide. And when this gas meets the marble, it forms calcium carbonate. That's why this could lead to the appearance of cracks in the minarets of the Taj Mahal. Also, a legend says that if these doors get open, a dreadful curse will be unleashed from the mausoleum's underground chambers. And here's a bonus from Canada: the door of room 873. This is a room at the Fairmont Banff Springs Hotel, which opened in 1888. The story goes like this. Decades ago, someone committed a crime in this room. After the investigation, the hotel administration refurbished the room and rented it out to other travelers. But rumor has it, other guests who stayed in the room later also faced unpleasant situations. They reported hearing strange noises. The TV in the room kept flickering. It's guessed that the door of room 873 was sealed with bricks. Curious guests who heard these mysterious stories wander along the corridor where the room used to be and knock on the walls to contact potential ghosts. Well, which of these secret doors would you like to open?
You've just reached your perfect spot on a deserted beach. It's so quiet here that you start to doze off. But as you open your eyes, you are shocked. Wait a minute, is that an actual house that's just been washed up on the shore? It may sound like the beginning of a sci-fi novel, but not if you live near this beach in El Salvador. There's a mysteriously abandoned house there that looks as if it's just been washed ashore. How did this villa end up there? How long has it been here without anyone noticing it? This mysterious construction is 46 miles south of El Salvador's capital, San Salvador. Locals say the building used to be a hotel called Puerto Ventura. At the time it was built, its main attraction was the fact that it was really close to the sea. Unfortunately, the engineering behind it wasn't well planned out, all because locals didn't need any official permission to start the construction. The hotel was too close to the water and dangerously exposed to the elements. The Roman-style villa is now a mere 50 feet from the edge of the sea when the tide is low. It can only be accessed in the morning because later, the tides fill the first floor with salt water. What's now left of the hotel looks like the ruins of a two-story house. The front part is very impressive, with Roman-type pillars. It also has wide windows on the second floor. You can still see parts of the iron structures and remains of what used to be the gateway to the second floor. There are some bleachers at the top of the building. They're sometimes used by tourists. More and more people are now browsing the area, taking photos, even though the building is obviously not safe for climbing. There's little information on how long it's been sitting in its current location, but some locals say it's been there for at least 20 years. It had remained a local secret for years before it was discovered by a TikTok user in 2021. But that doesn't answer the question, how did the hotel end up in another location altogether? This is where things become a little fuzzy. While some locals say that the building was abandoned decades ago, others claim it was deserted after Hurricane Mitch hit the area back in 1998. Hurricane Mitch was one of the most dangerous weather phenomena to ever hit Central America. During the storm, the winds traveled at 178 miles per hour, and the hurricane itself lasted for about 15 hours. It was also the cause of a huge amount of rainfall, which resulted in floods and many dangerous landslides. Being built so close to the shoreline, the former hotel had little chance of surviving the extreme weather conditions, so it must have been literally displaced. After sitting under the sun, you might start dreaming of some snowballs getting washed ashore. To even out the temperature. I'm not kidding. This strange natural phenomenon did happen back in 2016. It resulted in about 11 miles of the coast of the Gulf of Aab in West Siberia getting covered with huge snowballs. Because of the low temperatures, small pieces of ice started to form in the water. Afterward, the wind and waves rolled them into giant snowballs. Some of them were the size of a tennis ball, but others were up to 3 feet wide. A 2004 Harley-Davidson night train motorcycle popped up ashore on a British Columbia beach back in 2012. It was neatly packed inside a shipping container. It took some time to do it, but the owner was eventually traced down. His name was Ikuyo Yokoyama, and he lost his motorcycle after a tsunami struck Japan on March 11, 2011. To get to its final destination, the Harley-Davidson traveled more than 4,000 miles. To celebrate its long journey, Yokoyama donated the bike to the Harley-Davidson Museum in Milwaukee. It's been on display there ever since, in case you want to visit. This strange phenomenon made it look as if someone spilled dish soap all over the beach. But it does happen pretty often in Queensland. Sea foam covers the shore there a couple of times each year. It mostly happens after a storm, when ocean waves move dissolved organic matter around. It's basically like a giant ice cream maker. After Cyclone Debbie back in March of 2017, some beaches actually needed to be closed because of huge amounts of white foam. The wind even brought some of that foam to the nearby towns, making locals believe it was snowing. Would you be surprised to see a 6 by 6 foot rusty metal die washed ashore on your local beach? Because back in 2017, people in Coeur d'Alene in Idaho sure were. It turned out to be an old storage tank. Someone decided to spice it up a bit by adding some white spots to make it look like a die. In 1992, thousands of rubber duckies got stranded at sea after a large container ship that was transporting them was hit by a wave. As you can imagine, the ducks started popping up all over the world, in Hawaii, Alaska, South America, Australia, in Europe, and even in the Arctic. It's estimated that a couple hundred of those unlucky rubber ducks are still out there. Interestingly, they turned out to be very useful to scientists. Based on their movements, researchers can monitor the direction of water currents. If you happen to like dinosaurs, you'll be happy to know sea waters can also bring ashore some fossils. In 2018, a large dinosaur jawbone ended up on the coast of Lilstock Beach in Somerset, England. It used to belong to a dinosaur called Ichthyosaurus. Thanks to this finding, scientists were able to make an impressive discovery. Before, they thought the Ichthyosaurus could reach a maximum length of about 69 feet. But after they studied the jawbone, they ended up recalculating the creature's size. They concluded that the Ichthyosaurus could grow up to 85 feet. The megalodon was the largest predator in our planet's history. It lived almost all over the globe, except near the poles. How do we know that? Because megalodon teeth keep appearing on beaches every now and then. One staggering megalodon tooth, which was way over 20 inches long, was discovered in a river in Croatia. Since these creatures have been extinct for about 3 million years, their teeth are highly prized by fossil hunters. A giant Lego man that washed ashore is something I never thought I'd hear about. And it turns out it didn't happen just once. There were 4 of these giant Lego men in total, each around 8 feet tall. One was found in England and one in the Netherlands, while the other 2 popped up in Florida and California. It was surely not a coincidence, and after some research, people found out that a Dutch artist was behind this. Ego Leonard started this project as a personal statement campaign. A short film was even made about this, and it was called No Real Than You Are. This sentence was written on each of the 4 Lego men put to sea. A bundle of over 50 letters was washed ashore in New Jersey on a beach in Atlantic Highlands back in 2012. It happened shortly after Hurricane Sandy had struck the area. A 14-year-old boy found the letters and gave them to his mom. She was so touched by them that she decided to carefully dry and return them to their owner. The letters were the correspondence of two people named Dorothy and Lynn. They were dated between 1942 and 1948. The last was written a week before their wedding. With the help of an online genealogy site, the woman reached Dorothy and returned the letters to the 88-year-old woman who was living in a retirement home.